The satisfying slam of a fist on mahogany echoed through the penthouse dining room. Crystal glasses trembled. A water pitcher nearly toppled. Victoria Sterling's diamond rings caught the chandelier light as her hand came down again, harder this time. "I will destroy her before I let her take what's mine." Her voice was ice-wrapped in silk. 72 years old, silver hair pinned in a perfect chignon pearls resting against a cashmere sweater that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Victoria Sterling looked like old money because she was old money and old money protected itself. "Mother." Marcus stood at the opposite end of the table, his jaw tight. "You need to calm down." "Calm down." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "My grandsons, my blood, the heirs to everything your father and I built are on their knees praying with the help. A black maid from God knows where with no family, no credentials, no breeding. And you want me to calm down?" "She's good with them." "Good with them." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Is that what we're calling it now? She's manipulating children who don't know any better. She's worming her way into this family because she sees dollar signs. They always do." Marcus felt heat rising up his neck. "That's not what's happening." "Then what is happening, Marcus? Explain it to me. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've lost control of your own household. It looks like you've handed your children over to a stranger who scrubs toilets for a living. It looks like everything Olivia and I worked to build is being dismantled by a woman who probably can't even spell inheritance." "Don't." His voice dropped low, dangerous. "Don't bring Olivia into this." Victoria smiled thinly. Olivia would be horrified. She had standards. She understood that there are lines you don't cross, people you don't mix with. She would never have allowed this circus. "You didn't know her as well as you think." "I knew her well enough to know she's turning in her grave right now." Marcus's hands clenched at his sides. He wanted to scream. Wanted to tell his mother that Olivia had written a letter that she'd prayed for someone exactly like Grace, that everything Victoria believed about his wife was wrong. But he didn't. Not yet. "We're done with this conversation," he said instead. "We're done when I say we're done." Victoria picked up her handbag, a vintage Hermes that had belonged to her mother. "I'm giving you 1 week, Marcus. 1 week to get that woman out of this house. If you don't, I will, and I promise you my way will be much less pleasant." She walked past him without another glance, her heels clicking against marble, her perfume lingering like a threat. The elevator doors closed behind her. Marcus stood alone in the dining room, his heart pounding, his mother's words ringing in his ears. 1 week. Before we continue this story, I need you to do something for me. Subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. Drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story reaches around the world. And trust me, you're going to want to stay until the very end. This family story is just beginning. Now let me take you back to where it all started. 3 days earlier, pilots for Marcus Sterling's private jet touched down at Teterboro Airport 17 hours ahead of schedule. The San Francisco acquisition had closed faster than anyone expected. His legal team wanted to celebrate. His board members wanted a victory dinner. His assistant had already booked the penthouse suite at the Fairmont and arranged for a private chef. Marcus canceled all of it. "Sir," his assistant's voice crackled through the phone, "is everything all right?" "I'm going home." A pause. "Home tonight?" "Is that a problem?" "No, sir, of course not. I'll notify the household staff." "Don't?" "Sir, don't notify anyone. I want to surprise the boys." He hung up before she could ask more questions. The truth was, Marcus didn't know why he wanted to go home. He'd spent 4 years avoiding that penthouse, filling his calendar with meetings and mergers and international flights that kept him away for weeks at a time. Home meant Olivia's absence. Home meant 3 pairs of eyes that looked exactly like hers. Home meant a grief so heavy it crushed his chest every time he stood still long enough to feel it. But tonight, something was different. Maybe it was the way the San Francisco sunset had reminded him of the one Olivia loved to watch from their balcony. Maybe it was the family photo that had fallen out of his briefcase during the meeting, the one he'd forgotten he still carried. Maybe it was the dream he'd had last night, where Olivia had looked at him sadly and asked, "When are you coming back to them, Marcus? They're waiting." Whatever the reason, Marcus Sterling was going home. The drive from Teterboro to Manhattan took 47 minutes. Marcus spent most of it staring out the window, watching the city lights blur past, thinking about 3 boys who probably wouldn't even recognize him. When had he last seen them? Really seen them, not just a quick wave on his way to the airport, not just a distracted nod over breakfast while he checked stock prices on his phone. He couldn't remember. That realization sat in his stomach like a stone. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse foyer. Marcus stepped out, briefcase in hand, and immediately felt something wrong. Silence. Not the normal quiet of a well-run household. This was different. This was the silence of a held breath, of something hidden, of a secret being kept. "Hello?" His voice echoed off marble walls. "Anyone home?" Nothing. He set down his briefcase, loosened his tie, took 3 steps toward the living room, and stopped. The television was off. The gaming consoles sat untouched on their shelves. No toys scattered across the floor. No half-eaten snacks on the coffee table. No evidence that 3 6-year-old boys lived here at all. "Jaden," Marcus called out. "Miles Caleb." His own voice came back to him empty. He moved faster now, his heart beginning to pound. The kitchen was spotless. The playroom was pristine. The boys' bathroom had fresh towels hanging on the racks unused. Where the hell were his children? He pulled out his phone, called his head of security. "Mr. Sterling," the voice was calm, professional. "We weren't expecting you until Thursday." "Where are my sons?" "They're in the residence, sir, with the household staff." "I'm in the residence. There's no one here." A pause. "They should be in the nursery, sir. The new nanny has them on a strict afternoon schedule." Marcus hung up without responding. The nursery. Of course, the one room he'd been avoiding, the one room that still held Olivia's presence in every hand-painted star on the ceiling. Every carefully chosen piece of furniture, every memory of the day they'd found out they were having triplets, and she'd cried happy tears for an hour. He walked down the hallway. His footsteps sounded too loud. His breathing was too shallow. He felt like a stranger in his own home. "Because you are," a voice whispered in his head. "You've been a stranger for 4 years." The nursery door was closed. He reached for the handle, then stopped. Voices. Soft murmuring. Children's voices. He leaned closer. "Thank you, God, for not letting me hit Tyler today, even though he really deserved it." That was Jaden. Marcus would recognize his oldest son's voice anywhere, that slight rasp, that stubborn edge. "Jaden." A woman's voice, gentle but firm. "We don't say people deserve to get hit, but he called me a name. I know, baby, and that was wrong, but you chose not to hit back. That took strength. That's what we're thanking God for." A pause. Then Jaden again, quieter this time. "Okay, thank you, God, for giving me strength not to hit Tyler, even though he still deserved it." Soft laughter. "We'll work on that last part." "My turn." That was Miles, always eager, always rushing. "Thank you, God, for grace, and thank you for making my tummy feel better. It still hurts sometimes, but not as much. Grace says it's because I was holding all my feelings inside, and now I'm letting them out. Is that true, God? Can feelings make your tummy hurt? If yes, please keep helping me let them out. Amen." "We say amen at the end, sweetheart." "I know, but I wanted God to know I was serious about the question." "He knows." Marcus pressed his palm flat against the door. His hand was shaking. When had his hand started shaking? A long silence followed. Then the woman's voice again, softer now. "Caleb, do you want to say anything tonight?" "Nothing." "That's okay, baby. You don't have to talk. God hears your heart even when you don't say the words out loud." More silence. Marcus could barely breathe. Then so quiet he almost missed it. A small voice whispered, "Thank you for Grace. Please don't take her away like you took Mommy." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He stumbled back from the door, his chest constricting, his eyes burning with tears he hadn't allowed himself to shed in 4 years. Caleb, his youngest son, the one who'd stopped talking after Olivia's funeral, the one who'd bitten 3 nannies and screamed at 2 therapists, the one who'd climbed onto the balcony ledge 6 months ago because he wanted to see if heaven was close enough to touch. That boy had just spoken, had just prayed, had just asked God not to take away the one person who'd finally made him feel safe, and Marcus had no idea who that person was. He pushed the door open. The scene before him stopped his heart. 3 small boys knelt on the blue rug Olivia had picked out 7 years ago, the one with tiny stars that matched the ceiling. Their heads were bowed, their hands folded, their eyes closed in concentration. Beside them knelt a young black woman, late 20s maybe. Simple gray dress, hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. No makeup, no jewelry, nothing that suggested she was anything other than ordinary. But there was nothing ordinary about the way his sons leaned toward her. Nothing ordinary about the peace on their faces. Nothing ordinary about the way Caleb's small hand rested in hers, trusting, unafraid. The woman's eyes opened first. She saw him. Fear flashed across her face there and gone in an instant, replaced by careful composure. "Mr. Sterling?" She rose gracefully, smoothing her dress. "We weren't expecting you." The boy's eyes snapped open. 3 identical faces turned toward the doorway. 3 identical expressions of shock. "Dad?" Jaden's voice was uncertain, as if he wasn't quite sure Marcus was real. Miles blinked rapidly. "What are you doing here?" Caleb said nothing. He just moved closer to Grace, his hand still gripping hers. Marcus opened his mouth to speak. Nothing came out. He tried again. "I came home early. The deal closed ahead of schedule." "Oh." Jaden's face was unreadable. "Okay." No running to hug him, no excited shouts of "Daddy's home," no joy, no relief, no connection at all. Just three boys looking at him like he was a delivery man who'd knocked on the wrong door. "I'll give you some privacy," Grace said quietly, beginning to pull her hand from Caleb's. But Caleb held on tighter. His eyes widened. His breathing quickened. "It's okay, sweetheart," Grace murmured. "I'm just going to the kitchen. I'll be right back." "No." The word exploded out of Caleb, startling everyone. "Don't leave. Please, don't leave." Grace looked at Marcus. He looked at her. Something passed between them, something neither of them could name. "I'm not leaving," Grace said softly, kneeling back down to Caleb's level. "I promise. I'm staying right here." Caleb's death grip on her hand loosened slightly. His breathing slowed. Marcus watched his son cling to a stranger and felt his heart shatter into 1,000 pieces. That night, after the boys were in bed, Marcus found Grace in the kitchen. She was washing dishes by hand, even though the dishwasher sat empty beside her. Her movements were methodical, practiced. She didn't look up when he entered. "We need to talk," Marcus said. "I know." She still didn't look up. "I'll start packing tonight." "What?" "I know how this looks, Mr. Sterling. The praying, the closeness with the boys. Your mother has already made it clear that it's inappropriate. I understand if you want to let me go." "Let you go." Marcus crossed the kitchen and stood on the opposite side of the sink. "I just watched my son speak for the first time in 2 years. I watched him hold your hand like you were the only safe thing in the world, and you think I want to fire you." Grace's hand stilled in the water. She looked up at him, surprised. "Caleb doesn't speak," Marcus continued, his voice cracking. "Not since his mother's funeral. We've had him in therapy 3 times a week. Specialists from all over the country. Not one of them could get through to him." He paused. "But you did. In what, 3 weeks?" 4. Grace dried her hands on a towel. "And I didn't do anything special. I just stayed. That's special. In this house, that's extraordinary." She looked at him for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether to trust him. "The other nannies," she said finally. "How many have there been?" "Since Olivia died, 11. No, 12. "Why did they leave?" Marcus laughed bitterly. "Pick a reason. Jaden threw things. Miles screamed at night. Caleb bit one of them so hard she needed stitches." He ran a hand through his hair. "They were grieving. They didn't know how to handle it. Neither did I, so I just kept hiring new people and hoping someone would figure it out. But you never stayed." It wasn't an accusation, just a statement of fact. Somehow that made it worse. "No," Marcus admitted. "I never stayed." "Why not?" "Because I didn't know how." The words came out before he could stop them. Olivia was the one who knew how to be a parent. She made it look easy, effortless. I was just the guy who signed the checks and showed up for birthday parties. He paused. "When she died, I didn't know how to do any of it without her, so I stopped trying." Grace was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "My parents died when I was 7. Marcus looked up sharply. "Car accident," Grace continued. "Just like your wife. One day they were there, the next they were gone. My grandmother raised me after that." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It was a long time ago." She picked up another dish, began drying it slowly. "But I remember what it felt like. The confusion, the anger, the fear that everyone I loved would just disappear one day without warning. Is that why you're so good with them? Maybe, or maybe I just understand that children don't need perfect. They need present." The word hung in the air between them. Present. Such a simple thing. Such an impossible thing. "My mother thinks you're after money," Marcus said bluntly. Grace's expression didn't change. "I know." "She told you that." Not in those exact words, but the message was clear. Grace set down the dish. "Mr. Sterling, I make $42,000 a year. I live in a staff apartment on the 12th floor that's smaller than your closet. I have $7,000 in student loans and no savings to speak of. If I were after money, I'd have chosen a much smarter target than a grieving widower with 3 traumatized children." Despite everything, Marcus almost smiled. "Fair point. I'm here because those boys need someone, And right now, for whatever reason, they've decided that someone is me. She met his eyes. I know it won't last forever. Eventually they'll heal and they'll need me less and I'll move on to another job. But until then, I'd like to stay, if you'll let me. My mother won't make it easy. I've dealt with harder things than Victoria Sterling. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You haven't seen her when she's really angry. With all due respect, Mr. Sterling, I grew up black in rural Georgia in the 1990s. I've seen plenty of angry. For the first time in 4 years, Marcus Sterling laughed. It was a rusty sound, unpracticed, startling to both of them, but it was real. Call me Marcus, he said. Grace hesitated. I don't think that's appropriate. Probably not. Do it anyway. A pause. Then slowly the corner of her mouth lifted. All right, Marcus. The next morning, Marcus did something he hadn't done since Olivia's death. He woke up early. He went to the kitchen. He tried to make breakfast. The results were disastrous. The eggs were burned. The toast was black. The coffee was so strong it could have stripped paint. The orange juice somehow was too warm. But when the boys stumbled into the kitchen at 7:15, still rubbing sleep from their eyes, they stopped dead in their tracks. Dad, Miles's voice was incredulous. What are you doing? Making breakfast. You don't cook, Jaden said. You have meetings. Not today. The boys exchanged glances. That silent communication they'd developed over years of having only each other to rely on a language Marcus couldn't read because he'd never bothered to learn it. Is something wrong? Miles asked. Are you sick? No. Is someone dead? No. Then why are you here? The question hit Marcus like a slap. His own children couldn't imagine why he'd be home unless something terrible had happened. Because something terrible did happen, he thought. I missed 4 years of their lives. That's about as terrible as it gets. I'm here because I want to be, he said carefully. I know that's hard to believe. I know I haven't been around much. But I'm trying to change that. More silent communication. Jaden's eyes narrowed. Miles chewed his lip. Caleb stood slightly behind the others, watching. Mom used to make pancakes on Saturdays, Jaden said finally. You're not making pancakes. I don't know how to make pancakes. Then what's the point? Grace appeared in the doorway before Marcus could answer. She took in the scene, the burned eggs, the suspicious children, the father who looked completely lost and made a decision. I could teach you, she offered quietly. How to make pancakes, if you want. Jaden's hard expression flickered. Grace makes really good pancakes. Better than Mom's, Miles added. Then immediately looked guilty. I mean, not better, different, good different. It's okay to like different things, Grace said. Your mom would want you to eat good pancakes, whoever makes them. She moved to the stove, pulled out a mixing bowl, and began gathering ingredients. The boys relaxed visibly, their shoulders dropping, their defensive postures softening. Marcus stood awkwardly to the side, feeling like an intruder in his own kitchen. You can crack the eggs, Grace told him, if you want to help. He'd negotiated billion-dollar deals. He'd faced down hostile boards and aggressive investors. But standing in that kitchen, trying to crack eggs without getting shells everywhere, while his sons watched skeptically, Marcus Sterling had never felt more out of his depth. He cracked the first egg. Shell fragments scattered into the bowl. Miles giggled. Dad, you're supposed to do it on the edge. I know that. Then why did you hit it on the bottom? I didn't hit it on the bottom. I hit it on the... Marcus looked at the bowl. Okay, I hit it on the bottom. More giggles. Even Jaden cracked a smile. Here. Grace moved closer, took his hands in hers, and positioned them correctly over the bowl. Tap it gently on the rim, then pull apart with your thumbs. Her hands were warm, steady. Marcus tried to focus on the egg, and not on the fact that this was the closest he'd been to another human being in 4 years. He cracked the egg. It split perfectly, the yolk sliding into the bowl without a single shell fragment. Good job, Dad. Miles actually sounded impressed. Beginner's luck, Jaden muttered, but he was still smiling. They made pancakes together. Grace showed Marcus how to mix the batter, how to test the griddle, how to flip at exactly the right moment. The boys set the table arguing over who got which plate, who sat where, whether syrup or butter should go on first. It was chaos. It was wonderful. When they finally sat down to eat, Marcus looked around the table at his 3 sons, their faces sticky with syrup, their mouths full of pancakes, their eyes bright with something that looked almost like hope. This is good, Jaden admitted grudgingly. You're not terrible at pancakes. High praise from a tough critic, Grace murmured. Marcus caught her eye across the table. Something passed between them again, that nameless thing, that recognition of two broken people trying to help each other heal. "Same time tomorrow?" he asked. Jaden's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "You're staying." "I'm staying." The boys didn't cheer, didn't celebrate. They'd been disappointed too many times for that. But Miles smiled, and Jaden nodded slowly. And Caleb... Quiet? Caleb, who never spoke, looked at his father with eyes that held something other than fear for the first time in 2 years. It wasn't trust, not yet, but it was a start. Victoria Sterling arrived at 2:47 that afternoon, unannounced and uninvited. She swept into the penthouse like she owned it, which technically she partially did. The building had been a joint investment with Marcus's father 30 years ago, and Victoria still held a 20% stake. "Marcus," she kissed his cheek without warmth. "I heard you came home early. Is everything all right with the San Francisco deal?" "The deal is fine. I just wanted to see the boys." Victoria's eyebrows rose slightly. "How unexpected." "Is it?" "Darling, you haven't voluntarily spent more than 48 hours in this apartment since Olivia died. Forgive me for being surprised." She walked toward the living room, her sharp eyes taking in every detail. The breakfast dishes still drying in the rack. The boys' backpacks by the door. The small pot of dirt on the windowsill that hadn't been there before. "What's that? A plant," Marcus said. "The boys are growing it. Grace's idea." "Ah, yes, Grace." Victoria's voice cooled several degrees. "The maid who's apparently become a full-time spiritual advisor. I heard about your little prayer sessions." "From who?" "I have eyes everywhere, Marcus. You know that." She turned to face him. "I'm concerned. About a few prayers. About boundary violations. About inappropriate attachments. About a woman with no qualifications inserting herself into our family under the guise of religious instruction. She's helping them mother. For the first time in 4 years, they're actually getting better." "Getting better?" Victoria laughed. "They're being manipulated by a woman who sees an opportunity. She's young, she's pretty, she's conveniently single. And suddenly she's indispensable to your traumatized children. You don't find that suspicious. I find it miraculous. Miracles don't happen to people like us, Marcus. We have to make our own luck." Victoria sat down on the leather sofa, crossing her ankles elegantly. "I've done some research on Miss Williams." Marcus tensed. "What kind of research?" "The thorough kind. Born in Savannah, Georgia. Parents died when she was 7, raised by a grandmother who passed away 2 years ago." Victoria examined her manicured nails. She dropped out of nursing school after the grandmother's death, worked as a house cleaner for several agencies in the South before moving to New York 8 months ago. So she's had a hard life. That's not a crime. "No, but it does create a certain motivation. A young woman with no family, no money, no prospects suddenly finds herself in close contact with one of the wealthiest men in the country. A widower, no less. Vulnerable, lonely, desperate for someone to fix his broken family." Victoria's eyes were cold. "It's not exactly a mystery what she's after." "You don't know her." "I don't need to know her. I know the type." "The type?" Marcus felt his anger building. "What type is that mother young poor black?" Victoria's expression didn't change. "Don't be dramatic. Race has nothing to do with it. Doesn't it? This is about protecting our family, our legacy. Your father worked too hard, and I sacrificed too much to watch it all go to some gold digger who happened to be in the right place at the right time." "She's not a gold digger." "How would you know? You've spoken to her, 3 times? 4? Victoria stood, gathering her handbag. "I've arranged a dinner for next week. Camilla Sinclair, Harvard Law, old money, excellent family. She's been asking about you." "I'm not interested." "You should be. Camilla is appropriate. She understands our world. She would be a proper mother to those boys." "They already have a mother. Her name was Olivia." "Olivia is dead." Victoria's voice was sharp. "And those boys need a living, breathing woman to raise them. Someone with the right background, the right values, the right connections. Not a maid who teaches them gospel songs and calls it parenting." Marcus stepped closer to his mother, close enough that she had to look up to meet his eyes. "Grace stays," he said quietly. "And if you try to interfere with that, if you try to go behind my back or undermine her in any way, you will regret it." Victoria's eyes widened slightly. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm making a promise, the same way you taught me." For a long moment, neither of them moved. The air between them crackled with tension, decades of love and resentment and complicated history compressed into a single frozen instant. Then Victoria smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "We'll see," she said softly. "We'll see how long your little experiment lasts." She walked out without another word. Marcus stood alone in the living room, his heart pounding, his hands clenched at his sides. He knew his mother, knew she wouldn't give up this easily. Whatever she was planning, it was already in motion. He just had to figure out what it was before she destroyed everything. That evening, Marcus found a photograph that changed everything. He'd gone into his home office to check emails more out of habit than necessity. His laptop sat on the desk where he'd left it 3 weeks ago, surrounded by files and contracts and the debris of a life lived entirely through work. He wasn't looking for anything in particular, just killing time until dinner, avoiding the awkwardness of another encounter with his sons, wondering if he'd ever learn to talk to them like a normal father. The photograph fell out of a folder he'd knocked over. A candid shot, nothing special. Olivia on the balcony, 7 months pregnant, laughing at something off camera. The sunset behind her painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. Marcus remembered that moment. He'd been the one behind the camera. She'd been teasing him about something, probably his obsession with work, and he'd snapped the photo without thinking. She was so alive in that image, so present, so completely herself. He sat down heavily in his chair, the photograph trembling in his hand. "I miss you," he whispered. "God, I miss you so much." The silence answered him. It always did. He was about to put the photo away when he noticed something strange. The folder it had fallen from wasn't one of his. The label read "Personal," Olivia in handwriting he didn't recognize. Marcus opened the folder. Inside were more photographs. Letters, receipts, a whole collection of Olivia's private papers that he'd never seen before, and at the very bottom a sealed envelope with his name written on the front. In Olivia's handwriting. Marcus's heart stopped. He knew that handwriting, had seen it on grocery lists and birthday cards and the love notes she used to leave on his pillow when he worked too late. But this envelope was different. This envelope had been sealed, hidden, saved for something important. His hands shook as he opened it. The letter inside was dated 3 days before Olivia died. "My dearest Marcus, I'm writing this because I have a feeling I won't be here much longer. I don't know why. Call it intuition, call it paranoia, call it a wife's instinct for knowing when her time is running out. If you're reading this, I'm gone, and there are things I need you to know. First, I love you. I have loved you since the moment you walked into that coffee shop with your terrible business plan and your beautiful, serious eyes. You made me laugh that day. You've made me laugh every day since, even when I wanted to strangle you. Second, I'm scared. Not of dying. I've made my peace with that. I'm scared of what happens to you and the boys after I'm gone. I'm scared you'll retreat into your work and forget how to be a father. I'm scared you'll hire strangers to raise our sons because you don't trust yourself to do it. You can do it, Marcus. You're a better father than you think. You just have to show up. Third, I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to say. I've been praying about the boys, about their future, about who will help them grow into the men they're meant to become, and I believe with all my heart that God will send someone. She might not look like what you expect. She might come from somewhere you'd never think to look, but when she arrives, you'll know. There will be something about her, something patient, something kind, something that feels like home. Don't let your pride get in the way, Marcus. Don't let your mother's prejudices poison what could be a blessing. Watch for her. Trust her. Let her in. I love you. I love our boys. Take care of each other. Forever and always, Olivia Marcus, as read the letter 3 times. Then he put his head in his hands and wept. Olivia had known. Somehow impossibly she'd known. She'd prayed for someone to come. Someone patient. Someone kind. Someone who would stay. And grace had appeared. Marcus wasn't a religious man. He'd stopped believing in God the day the doctors told him Olivia was gone, that there was nothing they could do, that the most vibrant person he'd ever known had slipped away on a rainy Thursday afternoon while he was stuck in traffic trying to get to the hospital. But reading his wife's words, written 3 days before her death, predicting with impossible accuracy the woman who would save his sons, how could he explain that? How could anyone? He didn't know how long he sat there. Long enough for the sun to set. Long enough for the city lights to come on outside his window. Long enough for Grace to knock softly on his door. "Marcus, dinner's ready. The boys are asking for you. He wiped his face, folded the letter carefully, stood up. When he opened the door, Grace took one look at him and knew something had changed. What happened? He couldn't answer, not yet. So instead, he reached out and took her hand. She went very still. "I need to show you something," he said. "After dinner, after the boys are in bed. There's something you need to read." Grace looked at their joined hands. then at his face, then back at their hands. "Okay," she said quietly. "After dinner." She didn't pull away. And Marcus Sterling, who hadn't held anyone's hand since his wife died, felt something crack open in his chest. Hope. Dangerous, fragile, impossible hope. Dinner was chaos, as it always was with 3 6-year-olds. Miles spilled his milk. Jaden complained about the vegetables. Caleb ate in silence, but he smiled twice, which was more than he'd smiled in months. Marcus sat at the head of the table and tried to memorize every moment. The way Jaden's nose wrinkled when he laughed. The way Miles talked with his hands, food flying everywhere. The way Caleb watched everything with those old wise eyes, seeing more than any child should have to see. These were his sons, his blood, his future, and he'd almost missed it all. "Dad," Miles's voice cut through his thoughts. "You're staring." "Sorry, I was just thinking about how much you've grown." "Duh, we're kids. Kids grow." Miles rolled his eyes dramatically. "That's like basic science." "Since when do you know about basic science?" "Since Grace started reading us books about planets and stuff. Did you know there's a planet made entirely of diamonds? We should go there and get rich." "We're already rich," Jaden pointed out. "Richer than Diamond Planet rich." "There's no such thing as Diamond Planet rich." "There could be, if we went there." Marcus caught Grace's eye across the table. She was trying not to laugh. "Maybe we start with something smaller," she suggested. "Like the museum. They have a new space exhibit." "Can we go?" Miles bounced in his seat. "Please, Dad, can we go?" Marcus opened his mouth to make an excuse. Work obligations, scheduling conflicts, all the usual reasons he gave for never being available. But then he remembered Olivia's letter. Show up, she'd written. Just show up. "Saturday," he said. "We'll go Saturday." The boys stared at him. "Really?" Jaden's voice was skeptical. "Really?" Like actually really, or like, "I'll try, but something came up, really?" The question hurt because it was fair. Because Marcus had said those exact words 100 times before. "Actually, really," he said firmly. "I'll clear my schedule. We'll go first thing in the morning. Spend the whole day." More staring. More silent communication between the brothers. Then Miles broke into a grin so wide it split his face. "Awesome." Jaden tried to maintain his skeptical expression, but a smile crept through. "It better not be lame." "It won't be lame. Space is never lame." Fair point. Caleb didn't say anything, but under the table he reached over and took his father's hand. Just for a moment. Just a quick squeeze. But it was enough. After dinner, after baths, after stories and prayers and the long, slow ritual of getting 3 boys to actually stay in their beds, Marcus found Grace in the living room. She was sitting on the couch, her notebook in her lap, writing something he couldn't see. The city lights sparkled beyond the windows. The penthouse was quiet, peaceful, a sanctuary from the chaos of the day. "The letter," Grace said without looking up. "You said you wanted to show me something." Marcus sat down beside her, not too close, not too far. The exact distance of uncertainty. He handed her the envelope. Grace looked at it for a long moment, then she opened it, unfolded the pages, and began to read. Marcus watched her face as she read, watched the confusion turn to understanding, watched the understanding turn to tears. When she finished, she sat very still. "She knew," Grace whispered. "She knew someone would come. She prayed for it every night. And you think—" Grace couldn't finish the sentence. "I think you're the answer to my dead wife's prayers. I think you came into this house to clean floors and ended up saving my family. I think there's a reason Caleb speaks to you when he won't speak to anyone else. I think there's a reason my sons light up when you walk into a room." Grace's hands trembled on the letter. "Marcus, I'm just a maid." "No, you're not." He turned to face her fully. "You're the woman Olivia asked God to send. Whether you believe that or not, I do. And I need you to know that whatever my mother says, whatever anyone says, you belong here, in this family, with us." Tears slid down Grace's cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. Just stay. That's all I'm asking." A long silence stretched between them. Outside, the city hummed with life. Inside, 2 broken people sat with a dead woman's words between them, trying to find a path forward. "Your mother will never accept me," Grace said finally. "I don't care about my mother." "You should. She has power, resources. If she decides to destroy me, she can." "Then I'll protect you." Grace shook her head slowly. "You don't understand. People like me, we don't get happy endings. We get used up and thrown away. That's how the world works." "Not in this house, not anymore." She looked at him then. Really looked, searching his face for the lie, for the manipulation, for the trap she'd learned to expect from wealthy white men who made promises they never intended to keep. She didn't find any. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I'm so scared, Marcus." "So am I." He reached out and took her hand. "But I'd rather be scared together than alone. Wouldn't you—" Grace closed her eyes, let out a long, shaking breath. "Okay," she whispered to him. "Okay. I'll stay." She didn't know it yet, but somewhere in the city, Victoria Sterling was making a phone call, and everything was about to change. The phone call Victoria Sterling made that night would set everything in motion. She sat in her study at 11:47 p.m., a glass of bourbon untouched beside her, her private investigator's number already dialing. Raymond Cross had worked for the Sterling family for 23 years. He knew where the bodies were buried because he'd helped bury some of them. "I need everything," Victoria said without preamble. "The maid, Grace Williams, every secret, every mistake, every skeleton in every closet. I want it on my desk by Friday." "That's 4 days, Mrs. Sterling." "Then you'd better work fast." She hung up and stared at the photograph on her desk. Marcus and Olivia on their wedding day, young and hopeful and stupidly in love. Victoria had never approved of Olivia, not really. Too soft, too idealistic, too willing to believe the best in people. But at least Olivia had come from the right family. At least she'd understood the rules. This Grace Williams understood nothing, and Victoria would make sure she learned. 3 days passed like a held breath. Marcus kept his promise about the museum. Saturday morning, he loaded all 3 boys into the car himself. No driver, no security detail, just a father and his sons on an ordinary outing. It was chaos from the start. Miles wanted to see the dinosaurs first. Jaden insisted on the space exhibit. Caleb pointed silently at the ocean section, his small finger pressed against the museum map. "We can see everything," Marcus said. "We have all day." "But what if we run out of time?" Miles was practically vibrating with anxiety. "What if they close before we finish? Then we'll come back next weekend." The boys went silent. All 3 of them stared at him with identical expressions of disbelief. "Next weekend," Jaden's voice was suspicious. "You're coming back next weekend. If you want me to. You never come back. You always say you will, but you don't." The words hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. He knelt down so he was at eye level with his sons right there in the museum lobby, with tourists streaming around them. "I know I've broken promises before. A lot of promises, and I know it's going to take time before you believe me." He looked at each of them in turn. "But I'm going to keep showing up, every day, every weekend, until you trust me again." Jaden's jaw tightened. "What if you have a meeting? I'll cancel it. What if it's important? You're more important." Miles's lower lip trembled. "Mom used to say that." "I know, she was right." Caleb stepped forward. He didn't speak, but he slipped his small hand into Marcus's and held on tight. "Dinosaurs first," Jaden said, finally, his voice rough. "Then space. Then fish." "Deal." They spent 7 hours in that museum. Marcus's feet ached. His back hurt from carrying Caleb on his shoulders through the Egypt exhibit. His ears rang from Miles's constant chatter and Jaden's endless questions. It was the best day he'd had in 4 years. When they got home, Grace was waiting with dinner. She took one look at Marcus's exhausted face and smiled. "Good day?" "The best." He meant it. The boys raced to tell her about everything they'd seen. The T-Rex skeleton, the planetarium show, the giant whale hanging from the ceiling. They talked over each other, interrupting, correcting, adding details the others had forgotten. Grace listened to all of it, asked questions, laughed at the right moments, made each boy feel like his version of the story was the most important one. Marcus watched her and felt something shift in his chest. Something dangerous. Something he wasn't ready to name. "Dad took a picture with a mummy," Miles announced. "It was so embarrassing." "It wasn't with the mummy, it was next to the mummy." "Same thing." "It's absolutely not the same thing." "Grace, isn't it the same thing?" Grace held up her hands. "I'm staying out of this one." "Coward," Marcus muttered, but he was smiling. Later that night, after the boys were asleep, he found Grace on the balcony. She was looking at the saplings they'd planted weeks ago, 3 small trees struggling to grow in their pots. "They're getting taller," she said without turning around. "So are the boys." "That's what children do, they grow. Whether we're watching or not." Marcus stood beside her close enough that their shoulders almost touched. The city glittered below them, millions of lights, millions of lives, and somehow he felt more alone with all those people than he did with this one woman. "My mother called today," he said. Grace's body tensed. "What did she say?" "Nothing good. She's planning something. I can feel it." "I know." Grace's voice was quiet. "She's been asking questions. The doorman told me someone came by yesterday asking about my work history, my background." Marcus turned to face her. "A private investigator." "Probably." "Damn it." He ran a hand through his hair. "I'll talk to her. I'll make her stop." "You can't make Victoria Sterling do anything, Marcus. You know that better than anyone." "Then what do you want me to do? Just let her dig into your past." Grace finally looked at him. Her eyes were sad but steady. "There's nothing to find. I'm exactly who I say I am. A woman from Savannah who lost her parents young and learned to take care of herself. That's not a scandal. That's just a life. She'll find something. She always does. Then let her find it." Grace turned back to the saplings. "I'm not afraid of the truth. Are you?" The question hung between them. Marcus didn't answer because he didn't know how. Monday morning brought the first crack in the foundation. Marcus was in his home office trying to work when his phone rang. His assistant's name flashed on the screen. "Sir, I have Raymond Cross on line 2. He says it's urgent." Marcus's blood ran cold. Raymond Cross worked for his mother, had worked for his mother for decades, and Raymond Cross never called Marcus directly unless something had gone very, very wrong. "Put him through." A click, then Raymond's gravelly voice. "Mr. Sterling, we need to talk." "About what?" "About the information your mother asked me to find, about Miss Williams." A pause. "I think you should hear it before she does." Marcus gripped the phone so tight his knuckles went white. "What did you find?" "Not over the phone. Can you meet me somewhere private?" "1 hour." "Where?" Raymond gave him an address. A coffee shop in Brooklyn, far from Manhattan, far from anyone who might recognize Marcus Sterling. 1 hour, Raymond repeated. "And Mr. Sterling come alone." The line went dead. Marcus stared at the phone in his hand. His heart was pounding. His mind was racing. What could Raymond have possibly found that he didn't want Victoria to know? He grabbed his coat and left without telling anyone. The coffee shop was nearly empty. Raymond Cross sat in a back booth, a manila folder on the table in front of him. He was a small man, unremarkable, the kind of person you'd pass on the street without a second glance. That's what made him so good at his job. Marcus slid into the booth across from him. "What's this about?" Raymond pushed the folder toward him. "Open it." Inside were photographs, documents, a birth certificate that made Marcus's vision blur. "This can't be right." "It is. I verified it 3 times. Marcus looked at the birth certificate again. Grace Elizabeth Williams, born September 14, 1995 in Savannah, Georgia, father unknown, mother Lorraine Williams. But that wasn't what made his hands shake. It was the other document beneath it. An adoption record from 1996 sealed by the state of Georgia, but unsealed by Raymond's particular set of skills. Lorraine Williams had given up another child, a baby girl born 2 years before Grace. Given away because Lorraine was 17 and scared, and her family had threatened to disown her if she kept the baby. That baby's name had been changed when she was adopted. Her new name was Olivia Martin, later Olivia Sterling, Marcus's wife. "Grace is Olivia's sister," Marcus whispered. The words didn't feel real. Nothing felt real. "Half-sister," Raymond corrected. "Same mother, different fathers. Lorraine had Grace when she was 19, kept her that time, but she never told either girl about the other." "Does Grace know?" "I don't think so. The records were sealed. Lorraine died when Grace was 7, same car accident that killed Grace's father. She probably never had the chance to tell her." Marcus stared at the documents. His wife, the woman he'd loved and lost, had a sister she never knew about. And that sister was now living in his house, caring for his children, becoming part of his family. "My mother," he said slowly. "Does she know?" Raymond's face was unreadable. "Not yet. That's why I called you first." "Why you work for her?" "I've worked for your family for 23 years, Mr. Sterling. I've done things I'm not proud of, but I won't destroy an innocent woman just because Victoria Sterling has a grudge." He paused. "What your mother wanted me to find was dirt. Something she could use to get rid of Miss Williams. Instead, I found this." "What are you going to tell her?" "That depends on you." Raymond leaned forward. "I can tell her the truth, that Grace Williams is her dead daughter-in-law's secret half-sister. that will either make Victoria embrace her or destroy her, and honestly, I don't know which way it would go. Or I can tell her I found nothing, that Grace Williams is exactly what she appears to be, a poor woman from Georgia with a sad past and no connections. Victoria will be disappointed, but she'll move on, find some other way to interfere. Marcus looked at the folder, at the birth certificates, at the faces of 2 baby girls who never knew they were sisters. Why are you giving me this choice? Raymond was quiet for a long moment. Because I knew Olivia, not well, but well enough. She used to bring me coffee when I was working late at your mother's house. She'd ask about my family, my grandchildren. She actually cared. He cleared his throat. She was a good person, and I think Grace is too. That's rare in our world, worth protecting. Marcus closed the folder. Tell my mother you found nothing. And Miss Williams, are you going to tell her? I don't know. Marcus stood up. But when I do, it'll be my choice, not Victoria's. He walked out of the coffee shop with the folder tucked under his arm and a secret that could change everything burning in his chest. He didn't go home right away. Instead, he walked. Block after block through neighborhoods he'd never visited, past people who didn't know or care that he was worth billions. He was just another man in a coat carrying a folder trying to figure out what the hell to do next. Grace was Olivia's sister. The woman who had saved his sons was connected to the woman he'd lost, not by coincidence, by blood. Olivia had prayed for someone to come, someone patient, someone kind, someone who would stay. And God, if there was a God, had sent her own sister. The symmetry of it was almost too perfect, too painful, like Olivia was still reaching out from beyond the grave, still trying to take care of her family, still finding ways to love them, even after death. Marcus stopped at a bench overlooking the East River. The sun was setting, painting the water in shades of orange and gold. Olivia would have loved this view. She always loved sunsets. He pulled out his phone and looked at the lock screen. A photo of the boys from last week, grinning at the camera with syrup on their faces. Grace was in the corner of the frame, partially cut off, but he could see her smile. She didn't know. She had no idea that the children she'd grown to love were her nephews. That the woman whose letter had made her cry was her own flesh and blood. Should he tell her? Would the truth bring her closer to the family or tear her away? Would she feel blessed or manipulated? Would she stay or run? Marcus didn't know, and for the first time in his life he was afraid to find out. When he finally got home, it was almost 8 p.m. The penthouse was quiet. Too quiet. Grace, he called out. Boys, no answer. He walked through the foyer, his heart rate climbing. The living room was empty. The kitchen was dark. The boys' bedroom door was open, their beds unmade, but no one was inside. Hello? His voice echoed off marble walls. Where is everyone? Then he heard it, crying, soft muffled coming from the nursery. He ran. Grace was kneeling on the floor holding Caleb in her arms. The boy was shaking, sobbing his small body, convulsing with grief. Miles sat beside them, tears streaming down his face, gripping Grace's arm like he was afraid she'd disappear. Jaden stood in the corner, his fists clenched, his jaw tight, fighting to hold himself together. What happened? Marcus dropped to his knees beside them. What's wrong? Grace looked up at him. Her eyes were red, her voice trembled. Your mother was here. The words hit him like ice water. What? She came while you were gone, said she wanted to check on the boys. I let her in because... Grace's voice broke. Because she's their grandmother, I didn't think... What did she do? Jaden answered, his voice sharp with fury. She said Grace was leaving. She said Grace was only here for the money and she was going to find a real family. She said we'd never see her again. She's lying. Marcus reached for Jaden, but the boy flinched away. Is she lying? Jaden's eyes were wild. Everyone leaves, Dad, everyone. Mom left, you left. Now Grace is going to leave too. I'm not leaving. Grace pulled Caleb closer. I told you, baby, I'm not going anywhere. That's what Mom said. Miles's voice was small, broken. She said she'd always be here. And then she died. The room went silent. Marcus felt something shatters inside him. Not his heart. He'd thought his heart was already broken. This was something deeper. Something fundamental. The realization that his mother had deliberately traumatized his children to get what she wanted. Listen to me. He gathered all 3 boys close, pulling them into his arms despite their resistance. Grace is staying, I promise you. On my life. On your mother's memory. Grace is staying. You can't promise that, Jaden said. You can't control everything. No, I can't. Marcus looked at Grace over the boys' heads. But I can promise that I will fight for this family every day with everything I have, and anyone who tries to hurt us, anyone who tries to tear us apart, will have to go through me first." He wasn't just talking to the boys anymore. He was making a vow. It took 2 hours to calm the children down. 2 hours of holding and rocking and reassuring. 2 hours of Grace singing hymns and Marcus telling stories, and all 4 of them refusing to let go. When the boys finally fell asleep exhausted from crying, Marcus and Grace stood in the hallway outside their room. "I'm sorry," his voice was raw. "I should have been here. I should have protected you." "You couldn't have known. I knew my mother. I knew what she was capable of. I should have had security, should have told them not to let her in. She's their grandmother, Marcus. You can't ban her from seeing her own grandchildren." "Watch me." Grace touched his arm. Her hand was warm, steady grounding. "What happened today was terrible, but it also showed me something." "What?" "Those boys chose me. They could have believed Victoria, could have decided she was right and I was just the help. Instead, they cried because they thought they were losing me." Her eyes glistened. "That means something. That means I matter to them. You matter to all of us." The words hung in the air, heavy, significant, impossible to take back. Grace looked at him for a long moment. Marcus could see her thinking, calculating, weighing the risks of whatever she was about to say. "There's something I need to tell you," she said finally. "Something I found out a few days ago. I was going to wait, but after tonight..." "What is it?" "I've been having dreams, ever since I came here. Dreams about a woman I've never met. She looks like me, but older, happier. She's always holding babies, 3 of them, and she's laughing." Marcus's blood went cold. "Grace?" "I thought I was going crazy, but then I started looking through old photos of this place, the ones in the storage closet, and I found pictures of your wife." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a photograph. Olivia, 7 months pregnant, laughing at the camera. "She looks like me, Marcus. Not exactly, but close. The same eyes, the same smile, the same..." She trailed off. "I called my grandmother's lawyer yesterday, asked if there was anything about my family that I didn't know, anything that was hidden from me." Marcus couldn't breathe. "What did he say?" "He said my mother had another daughter before me, a baby she gave away when she was 17. Grace's voice shook. "He said that baby was adopted by a family named Martin." Olivia's maiden name. "You knew," Grace whispered. "You found out. That's where you went today." Marcus couldn't deny it. "Raymond Cross, my mother's investigator. He found the records. He told me before he told her." "How long have you known?" "A few hours. I was trying to figure out how to tell you." Grace sat down on the hallway floor, her back against the wall, her legs giving out beneath her. Marcus sat beside her, close enough to touch, but not touching. "She was my sister," Grace said. "The woman in the letter? The woman who prayed for someone to come. She was my sister, and I never knew she existed." "She didn't know either. The records were sealed." "But God knew." Grace looked at him, tears streaming down her face. "He knew. And he sent me here anyway, to her children, to her husband, to the family she left behind. Do you believe that... I don't know what else to believe." She wiped her eyes. "All my life I felt like something was missing, like there was a hole in me that nothing could fill. I thought it was my parents, thought it was loneliness, but maybe it was her. Maybe I was grieving someone I never even met." Marcus took her hand. This time she didn't pull away. "Olivia would have loved you," he said. "She would have been so happy to have a sister." "You think so?" "I know so. She always said she felt like an only child, even though she wasn't technically alone. She never connected with her adoptive siblings, always felt like she was from somewhere else." He paused. "Maybe she was dreaming of you, too." They sat together in the hallway until the sun started to rise, talking, crying, sharing stories about a woman they'd both loved without knowing they shared her. And somewhere in that long dark night, something changed. Grace wasn't just the maid anymore. She was family, real family, blood. Tuesday morning, Victoria Sterling arrived at the penthouse without warning. She strode in like she owned the place, which she partially did, her heels clicking against marble, her Chanel suit perfectly pressed, her threats on her face arranged in an expression of maternal concern. Marcus was waiting for her. "Mother?" His voice was ice. "We need to talk." "Darling, I'm so glad you called. I've been worried sick about those boys. After yesterday, After yesterday, you thought you'd succeeded in driving Grace away. You were wrong." Victoria's expression flickered. "I don't know what you mean." "Don't lie to me. Jaden told me everything." You came here while I was gone and told my children that Grace was leaving, that she only wanted money, that they'd never see her again. I was trying to prepare them for the inevitable. The inevitable, Marcus stepped closer to his mother. Let me tell you what's inevitable. Grace is staying, in this house, with this family, and if you ever try to manipulate my children again, I will cut you out of our lives completely. Victoria's eyes widened. You wouldn't dare. Try me. Marcus, listen to yourself. You're threatening your own mother over a maid, a nobody, a woman who showed up out of nowhere and somehow convinced you she's indispensable. She is indispensable. She's a gold digger. She's Olivia's sister. The words dropped like a bomb. Victoria went completely still, the color draining from her face. What did you say? You heard me. Grace Williams is Olivia's half-sister. Same mother, different fathers. The records were sealed, but Raymond found them. Marcus smiled grimly. He called me first, wanted to give me the choice of how to handle it. I'm guessing he didn't extend you the same courtesy. Victoria's hand trembled as she reached for the back of a chair. That's impossible. It's true. Check the birth certificates yourself if you don't believe me. Lorraine Williams had Olivia when she was 17, gave her up for adoption, had Grace 2 years later and kept her. Marcus watched his mother's face crumble. The woman you've been trying to destroy is your dead daughter-in-law's blood. She's the aunt of your grandchildren. She's family mother, whether you like it or not. Victoria sat down heavily. For the first time in Marcus's memory, she looked old, defeated. I didn't know, she whispered. No, you didn't, because you were too busy trying to get rid of her to actually learn who she was. But the things I said, the things I did, were cruel and wrong, and nearly broke 3 little boys who have already lost too much. Marcus stood over his mother, looking down at her with a mixture of anger and pity. You have a choice to make. You can accept Grace, welcome her into this family, try to make amends for the damage you've done, or you can keep fighting and lose your son and your grandchildren forever. Victoria looked up at him. Her eyes were wet. I was trying to protect you. I don't need protection. I need a mother who trusts me, who respects my choices, who treats the people I love with dignity. He paused. Can you do that? A long silence. The clock on the wall ticked. The city hummed outside the windows. I don't know, Victoria said finally. I've spent so long trying to control everything, trying to make sure nothing went wrong. After your father died, after Olivia died, I thought if I could just hold on tight enough, nothing else would slip away. That's not how it works, Mother. The tighter you hold, the more you lose. I know, she wiped her eyes with a handkerchief. I know that now. Then prove it. Apologize to Grace. Apologize to the boys. Show them you can change. Victoria stood up slowly, smoothing her skirt, gathering the pieces of her dignity. Where is she, Grace? In the kitchen, with the boys. Victoria nodded once. Then she walked toward the kitchen, her steps slower than before. Her shoulders less rigid. Marcus followed at a distance, not sure what to expect. Grace was at the counter, helping Caleb cut an apple into slices. Miles was chattering about something that had happened at school. Jaden was pretending to do homework, but clearly watching the door. When Victoria entered, everyone went silent. Grace's hand tightened on the knife. Her body tensed. She positioned herself slightly in front of Caleb, protective, ready. Mrs. Sterling, she said carefully, is there something I can help you with? Victoria stopped a few feet away. For a moment, she just looked at Grace. Really looked, seeing the resemblance that had been there all along, if only she'd cared to notice. I came to apologize, Victoria said, for yesterday, for everything. Grace didn't respond. The boys watched with wide eyes. What I said was wrong. What I did was unforgivable. I was so focused on protecting this family that I nearly destroyed it. Victoria's voice cracked. I've just learned something that changes everything. Something about who you are. And I want you to know that I see you now. Really see you. What do you mean? Grace asked. What did you learn? Victoria looked at Marcus. He nodded. You're Olivia's sister, Victoria said softly. Her half-sister, the daughter Lorraine Williams kept. The knife slipped from Grace's hand and clattered against the counter. You knew, she whispered to Marcus. I found out yesterday. I was going to tell you. Grace's eyes filled with tears. She looked at Victoria, at Marcus, at the 3 boys who were now staring at her with new understanding. I'm their aunt, she breathed. I'm actually their aunt. Yes, Victoria stepped closer. Your family, real family, and I was too blind and too prejudiced to see it. She reached out and took Grace's hand. I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry. Can you ever forgive me? Grace looked down at their joined hands, at Victoria's diamond rings pressing against her bare fingers, at the contrast between them that had seemed so insurmountable just days ago. I don't know, Grace said honestly. What you said to those boys. You made them think everyone would leave them. You made them believe they couldn't trust anyone. I know, and I will spend the rest of my life making it up to them. Words are easy, Mrs. Sterling. Actions are harder. Then watch my actions. Victoria squeezed her hand. Give me a chance to prove I can change. Please. Grace looked at the boys, at Caleb, who was clutching her skirt, at Miles, who was holding his breath, at Jaden, who was watching with guarded eyes. It's not my decision alone, Grace said. It's theirs. She turned to face the children kneeling down to their level. Your grandmother said some things that hurt you. She's asking for forgiveness now. What do you think? Jaden spoke first. People say sorry all the time. It doesn't mean anything. Sometimes it does, Grace said. Sometimes people really do change, but you're right to be careful. Trust has to be earned. Can she earn it? Miles asked. Can people really change when they're old? Hey, Victoria said, a ghost of a smile on her face. I'm not that old. Miles looked at her. You're pretty old, Grandma. Despite everything, Marcus laughed. It broke the tension like a wave breaking on rocks. Give her a chance, Grace said softly. One chance. If she breaks your trust again, she's gone. But if she keeps her promise... Jaden finished. Maybe she can stay for Christmas. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. I would like that. I would like that very much. She opened her arms, uncertain, waiting. Miles moved first, then Caleb. Finally, reluctantly, Jaden. 3 boys hugged their grandmother for the first time in 4 years. And Marcus watched from the doorway, Grace beside him, hope blooming in his chest like a flower, finally breaking through frozen ground. That night, after Victoria had left and the boys were in bed, Grace found Marcus on the balcony again. Hell of a day, she said. Hell of a week. Hell of a month. Marcus laughed. Fair point. They stood together looking out at the city lights. The saplings beside them had grown another inch. Life finding a way even in the most unlikely places. What happens now? Grace asked. I don't know. We figure it out as we go, I guess. That's terrifying. Also exciting. Also exciting, she agreed. Marcus turned to face her. In the soft light, she looked so much like Olivia, it made his chest ache. But she was different too, stronger in some ways, softer in others. Her own person with her own story, her own journey. I meant what I said earlier, he told her. You're family now, not just because of Olivia, because you chose us, because you stayed, you stayed when everyone else left. I didn't have anywhere else to go. That's not why you stayed, and we both know it. Grace smiled. No, it's not. She reached out and took his hand. Her fingers intertwined with his warm and steady and real. Whatever comes next, she said, we face it together, all of us. You, me, the boys. Even Victoria. Even Victoria. She's trying. That counts for something. Marcus squeezed her hand. You're more forgiving than I am. Someone has to be. They stood together as the city hummed below them and the stars came out above. 3 saplings, 3 boys. 2 broken people learning to heal. And somewhere Marcus could almost feel Olivia smiling. Her prayer had been answered. Her family was finally finding its way home. 2 weeks passed like water through open fingers. The penthouse transformed in ways no one could have predicted. Victoria came by every Tuesday and Thursday, not to supervise or criticize, but to sit with the boys while Grace made dinner. She read them stories, helped with homework, let Miles teach her how to play video games even though she was terrible at it and died every 30 seconds. Grandma, you have to jump, Miles said for the 15th time. The button on the right. I'm pressing the button on the right. No, you're pressing the button on the left. That makes you crouch. Crouching doesn't help when there's a giant pit in front of you. This game is unnecessarily complicated. It's literally for 7-year-olds. Then 7-year-olds are smarter than I gave them credit for. That's good. Jaden watched from the corner, still guarded, still waiting for the other shoe to drop. But each day, Victoria showed up. Each day she kept her promises. The wall around him cracked, shook a little more. Marcus noticed everything. He'd become an observer of his own family, cataloging the small moments he'd missed for 4 years. The way Caleb hummed while he ate breakfast. The way Miles talked with his hands when he was excited. The way Jaden's tough exterior melted whenever Grace sang gospel songs while cooking. And Grace herself. She moved through the household like water, filling every crack, softening every edge. She woke before anyone else and went to bed after everyone was asleep. She remembered every preference, every fear, every unspoken need. But Marcus also noticed the shadows under her eyes. The way she paused, sometimes staring at photographs of Olivia touching the frame with trembling fingers. The way she excused herself at odd moments and returned with red-rimmed eyes. She was grieving too, grieving a sister she'd never known, grieving a lifetime of memories they could have shared. "You don't have to be strong all the time," Marcus told her one night. They were in the kitchen washing dishes side by side, the boys long since asleep. "I'm not being strong," Grace said. "I'm just surviving. There's a difference." "Is there?" Strength implies choice. Survival is just reflex. She handed him a plate to dry. "When my parents died, I didn't choose to keep going. I just did. Because my grandmother needed me. Because the world doesn't stop turning just because your heart is broken. And now I keep going because those boys need me. Because you need me." She paused. "Because I need this family as much as it needs me." Marcus set down the plate, turned to face her fully. "Grace, I need to tell you something." "That sounds serious." "It is." He took a breath. "These past few weeks watching you with the boys, watching you become part of our lives, I felt things I didn't think I could feel anymore. Things I thought died with Olivia." Grace went very still. "Marcus, I'm not saying this to pressure you. I'm not expecting anything. But I can't keep pretending that you're just the nanny or just Olivia's sister or just a member of the household. You're more than that. You've become more than that. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you're patient when patience is impossible. I know you're kind when kindness costs you. I know you love my sons like they're your own blood, which as it turns out, they actually are." He smiled slightly. "I know you sing off key when you think no one's listening. I know you cry during commercials about puppies. I know you keep a journal and write in it every night before bed." Grace's eyes widened. "How do you know about the journal?" "I'm observant, when I choose to be." She laughed despite herself, a real laugh, warm and surprised. "You're something else, Marcus Sterling." "Is that a good thing?" "I haven't decided yet." They stood there in the kitchen, the space between them charged with something neither of them was ready to name. The refrigerator hummed, the clock ticked, the city breathed beyond the windows. "I should go to bed," Grace said finally. "You should. This conversation isn't over." "I know." She turned to leave, then stopped at the doorway. "Marcus." "Yes. I felt things too, things that scare me, things I don't know how to handle." She didn't turn around. "But I need time. To grieve Olivia, to figure out who I am in this new reality. Can you give me that?" "I can give you whatever you need." "Then give me time." She walked away, leaving Marcus alone with the dishes and the silence and a heart that was finally, terrifyingly waking up. 3 days later, the first crisis hit. Marcus was in a board meeting when his phone buzzed, then buzzed again, then started ringing incessantly with a number he didn't recognize. He ignored it. He was in the middle of closing a deal worth $800 million. Whatever it was could wait. Then his assistant knocked on the conference room door, her face pale. "Mr. Sterling, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's been an accident at the boys' school." The world stopped. Marcus was out of his chair before she finished speaking. "What kind of accident?" "I don't have details, just that emergency services were called and parents are being asked to come immediately." He didn't remember leaving the building, didn't remember getting in his car, didn't remember the drive to the school, though he must have made it because suddenly he was there, pushing through crowds of parents, searching frantically for 3 small faces. He found Grace first. She was standing by an ambulance, Caleb in her arms, her face streaked with tears. Miles stood beside her, his left arm in a makeshift sling. Jaden sat on the curb, a paramedic examining a gash on his forehead. "What happened?" Marcus grabbed Grace's shoulders. "Are they okay? Grace, talk to me." "They're okay." Her voice shook. "They're going to be okay. There was a fire in the science lab. Everyone was evacuating, and there was a stampede in the hallway. Miles got knocked down. Jaden cut his head on a locker." "Caleb?" She couldn't finish. "Caleb what?" He stopped breathing. Grace's whole body trembled. Just for a minute, panic attack. They gave him oxygen, and he came back. But Marcus, he stopped breathing. I couldn't... She broke down completely. Marcus pulled her into his arm, Caleb sandwiched between them, holding on like the world was ending. "I'm okay, Daddy." Caleb's small voice came from somewhere in the tangle of bodies. "I'm okay now." Daddy. He hadn't called Marcus that in 2 years. Marcus felt tears streaming down his face. He didn't try to hide them. "I know, buddy. I know you're okay. I've got you. I've got all of you." They went to the hospital anyway, just to be safe. Miles's arm was sprained, not broken. Jaden needed 5 stitches. Caleb was observed for an hour and released with instructions to follow up with his pediatrician. By the time they got home, it was nearly midnight. Victoria was waiting at the penthouse, having seen the news on television. For once, she didn't say anything about impropriety or appearances. She just hugged each boy, kissed their foreheads, and helped Grace get them into bed. When the children were finally asleep, the 3 adults sat in the living room, exhausted and shaken. "I should have been there," Victoria said quietly. "I was at a charity luncheon, sipping champagne while my grandchildren were in danger." "You couldn't have known," Marcus said. "Neither could you. But you got there faster than I did." Grace was there. Grace is always there. Victoria looked at Grace, really looked at her with something approaching genuine respect. "Yes," she said. "She is." Grace was staring at her hands. They were still trembling. "He stopped breathing," she whispered. "Just for a moment, but I felt his body go limp in my arms, and I thought we'd lost him. I thought I'd found my sister's children just to watch one of them die." "But he didn't die." Marcus moved to sit beside her. "He came back, because you were there, because you kept him calm until help arrived." "I almost lost him, Marcus." "But you didn't. That's what matters." Grace shook her head. "You don't understand. I've lost everyone. My parents, my grandmother, and now almost Caleb." She looked up at him, her eyes haunted. "How many times can a person's heart break before it just stops working? As many times as it takes. And then you put it back together and keep going." "Oh." Marcus took her hands in his. "You're not alone anymore, Grace. Whatever happens, you're not alone." Victoria stood abruptly. "I should go. Give you some privacy." "Mother, wait." She stopped at the doorway. "Thank you," Marcus said, "for being here tonight, for changing, for trying." Victoria's eyes glistened. "It's the least I can do after everything." She glanced at Grace. "Take care of each other. Life is too short for anything else." She left without another word. Marcus turned back to Grace. She was crying quietly, tears sliding down her cheeks, unchecked. "Hey." He cupped her face in his hands. "Look at me." She did. "Those boys are alive because so you, not just tonight, every night, every day you've been here, you've been saving them in ways nobody else could. Don't ever forget that." "I'm so tired, Marcus. I'm so tired of being strong." "Then stop, just for tonight. Let me be strong for both of us." He pulled her into his arms. She collapsed against him, sobbing, all the fear and grief and exhaustion pouring out in one overwhelming wave. He held her until she was empty, until the tears stopped, until her breathing slowed and her body relaxed against his. "I should check on the boys," she murmured. "I'll check on them. You sleep." "I can't sleep in there. The guest room is—" "Sleep here?" He gestured to the couch. "I'll get you blankets. I'll be right in the next room if you need anything." Grace looked at him for a long moment. "You're a good man, Marcus Sterling." "I'm trying to be." "No, you are." She touched his face gently. "Olivia was lucky to have you, and so are those boys." "So are you." She smiled through her tears. "So am I." The next morning, everything changed. Marcus woke to find all 3 boys piled on the couch with Grace, a tangle of limbs and blankets, sleeping peacefully despite everything they'd been through. Caleb was curled against Grace's side, his hand fisted in her shirt like he was afraid she'd disappear. Miles had somehow ended up at the opposite end, his feet in Jaden's face. Jaden was sprawled across everyone, mouth open, snoring softly. They looked like a family. His family. Marcus pulled out his phone and took a picture. He didn't know what he'd do with it yet. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. But he wanted to remember this moment. This proof that broken things could be put back together. He was making coffee when Jaden appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Dad?" "Hey, buddy, how's your head?" Jaden touched the bandage on his forehead. "Hurts, but I've had worse." "You have?" "Yeah. Remember when I fell off my bike last year? That was worse." Marcus didn't remember. He'd been in Singapore when it happened. Another assistant, another phone call, another promise to be there next time. I'm sorry I wasn't there for that. Jaden shrugged. It's okay. You're here now. I'm trying to be. I know. Jaden walked to the refrigerator, pulled out the orange juice, poured himself a glass. So casual, so ordinary, but Marcus felt tears prickling at his eyes. Hey, Dad. Yeah? I think Grace should stay forever. Marcus's heart clenched. You do? Yeah, she's like Mom, but different. She makes things feel safe again. Jaden looked down at his juice. When the fire happened yesterday, I was really scared, but then I saw Grace running toward us instead of away, and I knew it would be okay, because she always comes. She never runs away. She loves you guys. I know, we love her too. Jaden hesitated. Do you love her? The question hung in the air. I care about her very much. That's not what I asked. Marcus sighed. His son was too perceptive, by half. It's complicated, Jaden. Your mom only died 4 years ago. Grace is her sister, which makes everything more complicated. And there are things adults have to think about that kids don't understand yet. Like what? Like timing, and appropriateness, and what other people might think. Jaden rolled his eyes. Who cares what other people think? Grandma used to think Grace was bad and she was wrong. Maybe other people are wrong too. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just weren't around to notice. The words stung, but Jaden said them without malice. Just stating a fact that Marcus couldn't deny. You're right, Marcus said. I wasn't around, but I'm around now, and I'm going to keep being around. I promise. Okay. Jaden finished his juice, put the glass in the sink, and started to walk away. Then he stopped. Dad. Yeah. If you do love Grace, you should tell her. Life is too short not to tell people you love them. He paused. That's what Mom used to say. He walked out before Marcus could respond. Marcus stood alone in the kitchen, his coffee forgotten, his son's words echoing in his ears. Life is too short not to tell people you love them. Olivia had said that, all the time. Usually when she was frustrated with him for working too much, for missing another dinner, for prioritizing the company over the family. He hadn't listened then. Maybe it was time to start listening now. The week that followed was quiet. Healing. The boys recovered from their injuries. Miles's sprain faded to a dull ache. Jaden's stitches came out. Caleb stopped having nightmares about smoke and sirens. Marcus canceled all his meetings. Every single one. His assistant thought he'd lost his mind. His board members sent concerned emails. His stock price dipped 2% because of rumors that he was ill. He didn't care. He spent his days at home, playing board games with the boys, helping Grace in the kitchen, reading bedtime stories in silly voices, doing all the things he should have been doing for the past 4 years. One afternoon he found Caleb on the balcony staring at the 3 saplings they'd planted months ago. They're growing, Caleb said quietly. It was still rare for him to speak still special every time it happened. They are. Marcus knelt beside him. Slowly but surely. Grace said things don't grow just because we want them to. They grow because we show up. She's right. Caleb turned to look at him. His eyes were so much like Olivia's that it hurt to breathe. Are you going to keep showing up, Daddy? Yes, every day, I promise. That's what Mommy said too. Marcus felt his heart crack. I know, buddy, and I know she didn't mean to break that promise. Sometimes things happen that we can't control, but I'm going to do everything I can to be here, for as long as I can. Caleb nodded slowly. Then he did something he hadn't done in 2 years. He climbed into Marcus's lap and hugged him. Marcus held his son and watched the saplings sway in the breeze and felt for the first time since Olivia died like maybe everything would be okay. That night, Marcus made a decision. He found Grace in the nursery folding laundry. Such a simple task, but she did it with such care, smoothing each small shirt, matching each tiny sock. We need to talk, he said. She looked up, concern flickering across her face. That's never a good sentence. This time it is, I hope. He sat down on the edge of Jaden's bed. Grace stopped folding and waited. I've been thinking a lot, about the boys, about the future, about what this family needs to heal and grow. He paused. About you. Marcus? Let me finish, please. She nodded. When you came here, I barely noticed you. You were just another staff member, another person paid to keep this household running. But then I saw you with the boys, saw what you did for them, saw who you really are. He took a breath. And now I can't imagine this family without you. I'm not going anywhere. I know, but I want more than that. I want you to be more than the woman who lives in the staff quarters and helps with the children. I want you to be part of this family, officially. Grace's eyes widened. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to adopt you. Whatever she'd been expecting, it wasn't that. What? Not romantically, not as a wife, as family, legally. Marcus held up his hands. I know it sounds crazy, but hear me out. You're Olivia's sister, the boy's biological aunt. You've become more of a mother to them than anyone else could be, but legally, you're nothing. If something happened to me tomorrow, you'd have no rights to them at all. Grace's face went pale. I never thought about that. I have, a lot, and I don't want to risk it. He leaned forward. I want to draw up papers that make you their legal guardian if anything happens to me. I want to put your name on the household accounts. I want to make sure that no matter what, you and the boys stay together. That's a lot. I know. People will talk. They'll say I manipulated you. They'll say I was after your money all along. Let them talk. I don't care about people. I care about you and the boys. Grace was quiet for a long moment, her hands twisted in her lap. And what about what we talked about before, the feelings? Marcus hesitated. That hasn't changed, but this isn't about that. This is about protecting this family. Whatever happens between us romantically or not, I want you to be safe. I want the boys to be safe. I want all of us to know that we belong to each other legally and permanently. Victoria will have a stroke. Victoria will adjust. She's proven she can. Grace laughed shakily. You've really thought about this. I've thought about nothing else for days. She stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the city lights, the same view Olivia had loved. When I was little, she said quietly, I used to dream about having a real family, a mother and a father and brothers and sisters, people who wouldn't leave, people who chose me. She turned to face him. I never thought I'd find that, especially not like this. Is that a yes? It's a... I need to think about it. She crossed her arms over her chest. Not because I don't want to, but because this is big, Marcus. Life-changing big. And I've learned the hard way not to rush into things that matter. Take all the time you need. And if I say no, then nothing changes. You stay. The boys stay. We figure it out together just like we have been. He stood up and crossed to her. Grace, I'm not trying to trap you. I'm trying to free you. Free you from the uncertainty. Free you from the fear that someday someone will take this away from you. Tears glistened in her eyes. You don't know how much I've wanted that. How much I've wanted to believe that I could stay somewhere forever. Believe it, please. She reached up and touched his face. Her hand was warm, gentle. You're asking me to trust you with my entire future. Yes. To put my life in your hands. Yes. That's terrifying. I know, but I'll spend every day earning that trust. I promise. She stared at him for a long moment. The city hummed outside. The boys slept in the next room. The saplings on the balcony swayed in the night wind. Okay, she whispered. Okay? Okay, I'll do it. I'll let you make me family. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I'll let myself believe. Marcus pulled her into his arms. He could feel her heart pounding against his chest, could feel her tears soaking through his shirt, could feel the weight of years of loneliness and fear finally starting to lift. Thank you, he murmured into her hair. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for asking. She pulled back and looked at him. Now we just have to tell the boys. Something tells me they'll be okay with it. In the next room, pressed against the door, 3 small pairs of ears had heard everything, and 3 small faces were grinning in the darkness. The next morning, before Grace could say anything, Jaden walked up to her at breakfast and announced, We heard everything last night. Grace nearly dropped the pancake batter. You what? We heard Dad ask if you could be real family, through the wall. Jaden crossed his arms. We're okay with it, by the way, in case you were wondering. Miles bounced in his chair. Does this mean you're our aunt for real now? Like legally? It means... Grace looked at Marcus for help. He just shrugged. It means we're going to sign some papers that make sure I can always take care of you, no matter what happens. Like if Dad dies, Miles asked, matter-of-factly. Miles. Jaden punched his brother's arm. What? It's a valid question. People die all the time. Mom died. The room went quiet. Caleb, who had been silently eating his pancakes, looked up. "I don't want anyone else to die." Grace knelt beside him immediately. "Hey, nobody's dying. We're just making sure that no matter what, we all stay together. That's all. Promise." "Promise." Caleb nodded slowly. Then he said something that made everyone freeze. "I think Mom would be happy that her sister is taking care of us." It was the most he'd spoken in months, maybe years. Grace's eyes filled with tears. "I think she would too, baby. I really do." The papers were signed 3 weeks later. Marcus's lawyers had worked overtime to draw up the documents. Guardianship papers, trust amendments, legal acknowledgments that made Grace Elizabeth Williams an official member of the Sterling family with all the rights and protections that entailed. Victoria was there when they signed. She didn't say much, but she watched with an expression that might have been approval. "Well," she said afterward, "I suppose this makes you my, daughter-in-law's sister-in-law." "I think it just makes us family," Grace said. Victoria adjusted her pearls. "I suppose that's simpler." The boys threw a party that night. Pizza and ice cream and a movie marathon that lasted until midnight. Marcus sat on one end of the couch, Grace on the other 3 boys piled between them like puppies. At some point during the 3rd movie, Caleb crawled over to Grace and fell asleep in her lap. Then Miles followed his head on her shoulder. Jaden held out the longest, but eventually he slumped against his father's side, snoring softly. Marcus looked at Grace over the sleeping children. "So," he said quietly, "how does it feel being official?" "Terrifying." She smiled. "And wonderful, mostly wonderful." "Good." He reached across the pile of boys and took her hand. "Because I have a feeling this is just the beginning." Grace squeezed his fingers. "I have that feeling too." Outside, the city glittered with a million lights. Inside, a family that had been broken was finally starting to feel whole, and somewhere a woman who had prayed for exactly this was smiling. 6 months had passed since the papers were signed, and the Sterling penthouse had transformed into something unrecognizable. Not the furniture, not the artwork, not the expensive rugs or the crystal chandeliers that Olivia had picked out years ago. Those remained exactly as they'd always been. What changed was the sound. Laughter echoed through hallways that had known only silence. Arguments erupted over whose turn it was to pick the movie. Footsteps thundered across marble floors that had once absorbed nothing but grief. The penthouse was alive again. Marcus noticed it most in the mornings. He'd wake to the smell of coffee and pancakes, to the sound of the boys bickering about something ridiculous, to Grace's voice cutting through the chaos with patient authority. "Jaden, stop putting syrup in your brother's hair. Miles, I saw that, put the phone down. Caleb, use your words, baby. I can't understand pointing." It was messy, loud, exhausting. It was everything he'd ever wanted. The first Saturday of December arrived with unexpected snow. The boys pressed their faces against the penthouse windows, watching the flakes fall over Central Park, their breath fogging the glass. "Can we go outside?" Miles asked for the 14th time. "Please, please, please. After breakfast," Grace said. "But it might stop snowing by then." "Then it'll stop. Breakfast first." Jaden groaned dramatically. "You're the worst." "I've been called worse by better. Eat your eggs." Marcus watched the exchange. From behind his coffee cup, fighting a smile. Grace had become remarkably good at handling the boys' complaints. She never raised her voice, never lost her temper, but somehow always got them to do what she wanted. It was a superpower he'd never mastered. "Dad's staring again," Miles announced. "I'm not staring, I'm observing." "That's just staring with extra steps." "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart. You just weren't around to notice." The words hit differently now, not as accusations, but as teasing. The boys had stopped expecting Marcus to disappear. They'd started believing he would stay. That was Grace's doing, too. After breakfast, they bundled up and headed to Central Park. Marcus couldn't remember the last time he'd walked through the park just for fun. Usually he was rushing to a meeting or on a conference call or mentally running through spreadsheets while the world passed by unnoticed. Today, he was present. The boys immediately started a snowball fight. Jaden and Miles formed an alliance against Caleb, which lasted approximately 90 seconds before Miles betrayed Jaden and pelted him with snow from behind. "Traitor," Jaden shouted. "All's fair in love and war. We were on the same team. Teams are temporary. Victory is forever." Grace laughed and joined Caleb's side, helping him build a defensive snow wall. Marcus watched them for a moment, then made a decision. He scooped up a snowball and hurled it at Grace. It hit her square in the back. She spun around, eyes wide. "Marcus Sterling, did you just throw a snowball at me?" "I have no idea what you're talking about." I'm literally covered in snow. That could be from anyone. We're the only people in this section of the park. Circumstantial evidence. Grace's eyes narrowed. Oh, you're going to regret that. What followed was the most chaotic 20 minutes of Marcus's life. Snowballs flew from every direction. Alliances formed and dissolved in seconds. At one point, all three boys teamed up against the adults, pelting them mercilessly until Marcus and Grace were forced to surrender. We win, Miles declared, pumping his fist. You cheated, Marcus said, brushing snow from his coat. We used superior strategy. You waited until I was looking the other way. That's called tactical awareness, Dad. Read a book. They walked home through the falling snow, the boys running ahead, Grace and Marcus trailing behind. Their shoulders brushed occasionally. Neither of them moved away. Thank you, Marcus said quietly. For what? For this, for them, for making us a family again. Grace smiled, but there was something sad in it. You were always a family, Marcus. I just helped you remember. That's not true, and you know it. Maybe, maybe not. She stopped walking and turned to face him. Can I tell you something? Always. I've been having dreams again about Olivia. Marcus's heart clenched. What kind of dreams? Good ones. She's always smiling, always happy. She shows me around places I've never been, tells me stories about the boys when they were babies. Grace's voice trembled. Last night she said something that stuck with me. What? She said thank you for taking care of her family, for loving them when she couldn't be here anymore. Tears glistened in Grace's eyes. And then she said it was okay. What was okay? Grace looked at him for a long moment. The snow fell around them, soft and silent. I think she was giving me permission. To be happy, to stop feeling guilty for taking her place. Marcus reached out and took her hand. You didn't take her place, Grace. You made a new one. That's different. Is it? Yes, Olivia will always be their mother. Nothing changes that. But they have room in their hearts for more love. So do I. Grace's breath caught. Marcus, I know you asked for time, and I've tried to give it to you. But 6 months is a long time, and I need you to know that my feelings haven't changed. He stepped closer. I love you, Grace, not because you're Olivia's sister, not because you're good with the boys. I love you because of who you are, because you're brave and kind and stubborn and beautiful, and you make me want to be a better man. You are a better man. Because of you. They stood there in the falling snow, inches apart, the world narrowing to just the two of them. I love you too, Grace whispered. I've been trying not to, trying to convince myself it was wrong, or too soon, or too complicated. But I can't stop. I love your stubbornness and your terrible jokes and the way you look at your sons like they're the most important things in the universe. They are, along with you. Marcus. He kissed her. It was soft, tentative. A question more than a statement. Grace answered by pulling him closer, her hands fisting in his coat, her tears mixing with the snowflakes on her cheeks. When they finally pulled apart, they were both crying. Dad and Grace are kissing. Miles's voice shattered the moment. They turned to find all three boys standing 10 feet away, eyes wide, mouths open. Jaden recovered first. Finally, I was starting to think you'd never figure it out. You knew, Marcus asked. Everyone knew. Even Grandma knew. You're not exactly subtle, Dad. Grace laughed through her tears. What do you boys think? Is this okay? Miles ran forward and tackled them both in a hug. It's more than okay. It's perfect. Jaden joined a moment later, trying to look cool but failing miserably. I guess this means you're definitely staying forever now. I was always staying forever. Yeah, but now there's kissing involved. That's like a contract. Caleb was the last to approach. He stood a few feet away watching with those ancient eyes that saw too much. Caleb, Grace knelt down to his level. Are you okay with this? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that made everyone's heart stop. Mommy said this would happen. In my dreams? She said you were coming to take care of us, and then Daddy would fall in love with you, and everything would be okay again. Grace's tears started fresh. She did. She said it was part of the plan. God's plan. Caleb looked at his father. I think Mommy is happy now, because we're happy. Marcus dropped to his knees beside Grace, pulling Caleb into his arms. I think she is too, buddy. I really do. They stood there in Central Park, snow falling around them, 5 people who had been broken and were slowly becoming whole. It wasn't the end of their story. It was just the beginning of a new chapter. 2 weeks before Christmas, Victoria Sterling did something unprecedented. She threw a party. Not just any party, A celebration. An official welcome for Grace into the Sterling family, complete with catered food, expensive champagne, and an invitation list that included everyone who was anyone in Manhattan society. "Are you sure about this?" Marcus asked when she first proposed the idea. "I'm sure." Victoria's voice was firm. "I spent too long trying to push Grace away. Now I want to make it clear to everyone that she belongs, that anyone who disrespects her disrespects me." "That's surprisingly progressive of you, Mother." "Don't get used to it. I'm still the same old Victoria. I've just learned to choose my battles better." The party was scheduled for December 21st, the winter solstice. Victoria claimed the date was symbolic, the longest night of the year giving way to brighter days. Marcus suspected she just wanted to show off her holiday decorations. The morning of the party, Grace woke with a knot in her stomach. "I can't do this," she said, staring at the dress Victoria had bought for her. It was beautiful, elegant, clearly expensive. It looked nothing like anything Grace had ever worn. "You can come," Marcus said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "And you will, because you're the bravest person I know." "I'm not brave. I'm terrified." "That's what brave means, doing the scary thing anyway." "What if they hate me?" "They won't." "What if they think I'm a gold digger?" "Some of them probably will. We'll ignore them." "What if I trip and fall and embarrass everyone?" "Then I'll trip and fall too. We can be embarrassing together." Grace laughed despite herself. "You're impossible." "That's why you love me." "One of the many reasons." She turned in his arms and kissed him. "Okay, I'll do it. But if this goes badly, I'm blaming you." "Deal." The party started at 7 p.m. By 7:15, Grace wanted to disappear. The penthouse was packed with people she didn't know. They all seemed to know each other, trading air kisses and inside jokes, speaking in that particular way wealthy people had of making everything sound like a competition. Grace stood near the appetizer table, nursing a glass of champagne she didn't really want, trying to make herself invisible. It didn't work. "So you're the famous Grace Williams." She turned to find a woman in her 50s dripping with diamonds, looking at her like she was a specimen under a microscope. "I'm Grace, yes." "I'm Patricia Harrington. My husband and Marcus's father were partners at the firm. I knew Olivia quite well." Patricia's eyes swept over Grace appraisingly. "You look like her, around the eyes." "I've been told that." "It must be strange, stepping into her shoes, living in her house, raising her children." Grace felt heat rising to her cheeks. "I'm not trying to replace Olivia. No one could." "Of course not, dear. I didn't mean to imply—" Patricia trailed off her smile, not quite reaching her eye. "It's just such an unusual situation. The maid becoming mistress of the house, like something out of a soap opera." "I was never just a maid." "Weren't you?" Patricia sipped her champagne delicately. "I could have sworn I heard you came here to clean toilets. How fortunate that things worked out differently." Grace's hands trembled. She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, Victoria Sterling materialized beside her. "Patricia," Victoria's voice could have frozen the champagne. "How lovely to see you, though I'm sure you have somewhere else to be." Patricia's smile faltered. "Victoria, I was just getting to know your new—" "What is she exactly?" "She's family, and she's more welcome in this house than you'll ever be." Victoria took Grace's arm. "Now, if you'll excuse us, I have people I actually want Grace to meet." She steered Grace away before Patricia could respond. "Thank you," Grace whispered. "Grace. Don't thank me, I should apologize." Victoria's face was tight with anger. "I knew there would be people like Patricia here. I should have warned you." "It's not your fault." "It is, actually. I spent months telling people exactly what Patricia just said, that you were just the help, that you didn't belong." Victoria stopped walking and turned to face Grace. "I'm sorry for all of it. Every cruel word, every dismissive comment, every attempt to drive you away. I was wrong and I'm sorry." Grace stared at her. In all the months she'd known Victoria, the woman had never apologized so directly. "I forgive you," Grace said finally. "But Victoria, why are you being so nice to me now? What changed?" Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then she said something Grace didn't expect. "My daughter-in-law prayed for you. She asked God to send someone to take care of her family after she was gone, and he did. He sent her own sister." Victoria's voice cracked slightly. I may not understand God very well, but I know better than to fight against someone he clearly chose. That would be the height of arrogance even for me. Grace felt tears prickling at her eyes. Olivia was really something, wasn't she? She was extraordinary, just like you. Victoria squeezed her hand. Now come. There are people who actually deserve to meet you. The rest of the evening was a blur of introductions and conversations and champagne that Grace barely touched. But something had shifted. Victoria stayed by her side, making introductions, steering conversations, silently daring anyone to disrespect the newest member of the Sterling family. By the end of the night, Grace's feet ached and her face hurt from smiling, but she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Accepted, not just tolerated, not just permitted, genuinely welcomed into a world she'd never imagined being part of. After the last guest left, Grace found Marcus on the balcony staring out at the city lights. Hey, she said, joining him. Hey. He wrapped an arm around her waist. You survived. Barely. Patricia Harrington tried to destroy me in the first 20 minutes. I heard. My mother handled it. Your mother was incredible. She has her moments. Marcus turned to look at her scatter. How do you feel? Exhausted? Overwhelmed? Surprisingly happy? Good, because I have something for you. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Grace's heart stopped. Marcus? Before you panic, it's not an engagement ring. Not yet. We're not ready for that, and I know it. He opened the box to reveal a delicate gold necklace with a small charm in the shape of 3 interlinked hearts. The jeweler designed it custom. 3 hearts for the boys, all connected, all part of the same whole. Grace touched the charm with trembling fingers. It's beautiful. Turn it over. She did. On the back, in tiny engraved letters, were 4 words, forever, part of us. Marcus? Her voice broke. I wanted you to have something you could wear every day. A reminder that you belong here, that you're family, that nothing and no one can take that away. He took the necklace and fastened it around her neck. The charm rested against her collarbone, warm from his hands. I love it, she whispered. I love you. I love you too. He kissed her forehead. Merry almost Christmas, Grace Williams. Merry almost Christmas, Marcus Sterling. They stood together on the balcony, watching the city lights twinkle below the necklace, a warm weight against Grace's chest. Christmas morning arrived with unprecedented chaos. The boys were up at 5:47 a.m. pounding on doors, demanding that everyone wake up immediately because Santa had come and there were presents to open, and this was not a drill. Marcus groaned and pulled the pillow over his head. What time is it? Too early, Grace muttered from beside him. They'd started sharing a bed 3 weeks ago. Nothing had happened, just sleeping, just the comfort of another person's warmth through the night. But it meant everything. Dad, Grace, come on. Miles's voice could probably be heard 3 floors down. We should get up, Grace said. We should. We won't, but we should. She laughed and kissed his cheek. 5 more minutes, then we go. 5 minutes turned into 2. The boys' patience ran out, and suddenly all 3 of them were piling onto the bed, bouncing and shouting and making sleep absolutely impossible. Okay, we're up. Marcus threw off the covers, scooping Caleb into his arms. But you're all making coffee for me as punishment. We're 7. We can't make coffee. Then I guess you'll have to figure it out. The living room looked like Christmas had exploded. Victoria had outdone herself with decorations, and the tree was surrounded by more presents than the boys could count. Victoria herself was already there, seated in an armchair, a cup of coffee in her hands. You're here early, Marcus said. I've been here since 6. Those boys don't understand the concept of waiting. Sorry, Mother. Don't be. I wouldn't miss this for anything. The present opening was chaos. Paper flew everywhere. Boys shrieked with excitement over video games and toys and new clothes. Grace received a beautiful journal from the boys chosen by Jaden, who remembered she wrote in one every night. Marcus got a hand-painted tie from Miles that was hideous and perfect. But the biggest surprise came from Victoria. This is for you, she said, handing Grace an envelope. From all of us. Grace opened it carefully. Inside was a single piece of paper, heavy and official-looking. She read it once, then again, then looked up at Victoria with wide eyes. Is this real? Completely real? I had my lawyers draw it up. What is it? Marcus asked. Grace handed him the paper, unable to speak. It was a deed, a property transfer, for a house in Savannah, Georgia, just a few miles from where Grace had grown up. Your grandmother's house was sold after she died, Victoria said. I tracked down the current owners and bought it back. It's yours now, free and clear, a place for the boys to visit their aunt's hometown, a connection to your roots. Grace burst into tears. I know it doesn't make up for everything, Victoria continued. Nothing can, but I wanted you to have something that was truly yours, something no one can ever take away." Grace crossed the room and hugged Victoria. The older woman stiffened for a moment, then relaxed into the embrace. "Thank you," Grace whispered. "Thank you so much. You're family now. This is what family does." The boys watched with suspicious eyes. "Is Grandma crying?" Jaden asked. "Grandma does not cry," Victoria said, even as she wiped her eyes. "I have allergies." "To what?" "To nosy children asking too many questions." That night, after the chaos had settled and the boys were finally asleep, surrounded by their new toys, Marcus and Grace sat on the balcony one last time. The 3 saplings had grown significantly. They were actual trees, now small but strong, their branches reaching toward the sky. "1 year ago, I was alone," Marcus said quietly. "I was running a company and avoiding my children and slowly dying inside. I thought that was just how my life would be, forever. And now I have everything. 3 sons who actually want me around, a mother who's learning to be human, and you." He turned to look at her. "Especially you." Grace leaned her head against his shoulder. "I used to think God had forgotten about me, that I was one of those people who just slipped through the cracks. Too poor to matter, too ordinary to notice. You were never ordinary. I felt ordinary, invisible, like I was just passing through other people's lives without leaving any marks. You've left marks on this family that will never fade," she smiled. "I know that now, but it took a long time to believe it." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights twinkle the snow falling softly around them. "So what happens next?" Grace asked. "What do you mean? We've had 6 months of learning how to be together. Christmas is over. Real life starts again tomorrow. What happens when the magic fades and it's just normal?" Marcus turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Grace Williams, I promise you that I will love you in the normal. I will love you in the boring. I will love you when the dishes need washing and the boys are fighting and nothing feels magical at all. Because that's what real love is. It's not the grand gestures, it's the everyday. It's showing up even when it's hard." Grace felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "That's what you learned from Olivia. That's what I learned from you, both of you. 2 sisters who taught me the same lesson without ever meeting each other." He smiled. "Love isn't something you find. It's something you build, day after day, year after year, until it's so strong that nothing can tear it down. You should write greeting cards." "I should. I'd be terrible at it, but I should." She laughed and kissed him soft and sweet. "I love you, Marcus Sterling." "I love you too, Grace Williams." Above them, the stars shone bright, and somewhere beyond them, a woman who had prayed for exactly this was finally at peace. Spring arrived in Manhattan with blooming flowers and a question Marcus had been carrying for months. He stood in front of the mirror at 6:47 a.m. adjusting his tie for the 15th time. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. Behind him on the dresser sat a small velvet box that had been burning a hole in his pocket for 3 weeks. Today was the day. "Dad, you look weird." Jaden appeared in the doorway, still in his pajamas. "Thanks, very helpful." "Why are you dressed so fancy? It's Saturday." "I have plans." "What kind of plans?" Marcus turned to face his son. Jaden was 8 now, taller, more confident with a sharpness in his eyes that reminded Marcus of both Olivia and himself. "Can you keep a secret?" Jaden's eyes lit up. "Obviously." Marcus picked up the velvet box and opened it. Inside was a ring simple and elegant, a single diamond surrounded by smaller stones that caught the morning light. "I'm going to ask Grace to marry me." Jaden's jaw dropped. For a moment he was speechless, a rare occurrence for a boy who always had something to say. "For real, like actual marriage." "Like actual marriage." "Does she know?" "Not yet. That's kind of the point of a proposal." "Right. Right? Obviously." Jaden bounced on his heels. "Can I tell Miles and Caleb?" "No, this has to be a surprise." "But they're going to freak out. In a good way. Miles has been asking when you're going to marry Grace for like 3 months. Marcus smiled despite his nerves. "He has. Yeah, he said it's taking forever and you need to hurry up before Grace gets tired of waiting and leaves." "Grace isn't going to leave." "I know that. You know that. But Miles worries about everything." Jaden stepped closer, his expression suddenly serious. "Dad, are you nervous?" "Terrified?" "Why Grace loves you. Anyone can see that." "Knowing someone loves you and asking them to spend their life with you are 2 different things." "Are they?" Marcus looked at his son. 8 years old and already wiser than most adults. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just weren't around to notice. Jaden grinned, the familiar joke landing differently now, softened by time and healing. But seriously, Dad, don't mess this up. We really like having Grace around. I'll do my best. Your best better be good enough. Jaden walked out, Jeton leaving Marcus alone with the ring and his racing heart. The plan was simple. Marcus had arranged for Victoria to take the boys for the day under the pretense of shopping for summer clothes. In reality, they would be waiting at the location Marcus had chosen, ready to celebrate if all went well. If all went well, that was the terrifying part. He found Grace in the kitchen making coffee, her hair still damp from the shower. She wore jeans and a simple white blouse, looking more beautiful than anyone had a right to look at 7 in the morning. You're dressed up, she observed. I have a surprise for you. What kind of surprise? The kind that requires leaving the apartment. Grace raised an eyebrow. Marcus, I have things to do today. The boys are with Victoria all day. I've cleared your schedule. You've cleared my schedule. Completely. She set down her coffee cup, studying him with those eyes that always saw too much. What are you up to? Trust me. A pause, then a smile broke through. Always. The car took them out of Manhattan, across the bridge, through neighborhoods Grace didn't recognize. She asked questions the entire way. Marcus dodged all of them. Just wait, you'll see. I hate waiting. I know, consider this character building. They drove for nearly 2 hours. The city gave way to suburbs, then to countryside, then to roads lined with trees just beginning to bloom. When the car finally stopped, Grace looked out the window and went completely still. Marcus, is this your grandmother's house, the one Victoria bought back for you? Grace hadn't visited since receiving the deed at Christmas. She'd talked about going planned trips that never materialized, always finding reasons to delay. Too busy, too emotional, not ready. Now she was here, and Marcus could see the tears already forming. I can't believe you did this. I didn't do anything, I just drove you here. You know what I mean. They got out of the car together. The house was small, weathered with a wraparound porch and a swing that creaked in the breeze. It looked exactly like Grace had described it, except the garden was overgrown and the paint was peeling. It needs work, Marcus said. It's perfect. Grace walked toward the porch, her steps slow, reverent. My grandmother used to sit right there, in that swing. She'd sing hymns and shell peas and tell me stories about my mother. What kind of stories? Everything. How she laughed, how she danced, how she fell in love with my father, even though everyone told her not to. Grace touched the porch railing, her fingers tracing the worn wood. She never told me about Olivia, though, never mentioned that my mother had another daughter. Maybe she didn't know. Maybe, or maybe she was trying to protect me from something I couldn't change. Grace turned to look at him. Why are we here, Marcus, really? This was the moment, the one he'd been planning for weeks. Marcus took a deep breath, reached into his pocket, and pulled out the velvet box. Grace's hand flew to her mouth. Marcus, let me say this, please, before I lose my nerve. He dropped to one knee right there on the overgrown grass in front of her grandmother's house. Grace Elizabeth Williams, you came into my life as a stranger. You stayed as a savior, and it became my family, my partner, my best friend. You taught my sons how to pray. You taught me how to feel again. You showed all of us that love doesn't end, it just changes shape. Tears were streaming down Grace's face. She didn't wipe them away. I know I'm not perfect, Marcus continued. I work too much. I forget important dates. I still can't make pancakes without burning something. But I promise you this, I will spend every day of the rest of my life trying to deserve you. I will show up when it's hard. I will stay when it would be easier to leave. I will love you in the ordinary moments, because that's where real love lives. He opened the box, revealing the ring that had been waiting for this moment. Grace Williams, will you marry me? For a heartbeat silence. The wind rustled through the trees. A bird called, somewhere in the distance. Then Grace laughed a sound of pure joy and dropped to her knees beside him. Yes, 1,000 times yes, 1,000,000 times yes. She grabbed his face and kissed him hard and deep and full of promise. Yes, Marcus Sterling, I will marry you. He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her hand all along. They knelt together in the grass, holding each other, crying and laughing at the same time. I love you, Grace whispered. I love you too, forever. Forever is a long time. Not long enough. A car horn honked, shattering the moment. They turned to see a familiar SUV pulling up the driveway. Victoria's SUV. The doors flew open and 3 boys came tumbling out, followed by Victoria herself. "She said yes," Miles screamed at the top of his lungs. "Of course she said yes," Jaden replied. "Did you really think she'd say no?" "I was nervous. You're always nervous." Caleb ran straight to Grace, throwing his arms around her waist. He didn't say anything, just held on tight, his small body trembling with happiness. "You knew," Grace said, looking at the boys. "You all knew." "Dad can't keep secrets," Jaden admitted. "He told me this morning. I told Miles. Miles told Caleb. Caleb told Grandma." "I already knew," Victoria said, approaching with a rare, genuine smile. "Who do you think helped him pick the ring?" "You helped pick the ring." "Someone had to. Left to his own devices, Marcus would have bought something entirely too flashy." Victoria examined the ring on Grace's finger and nodded approvingly. "This is understated, elegant, perfect for you." Grace looked at her future mother-in-law with something approaching wonder. "Thank you, Victoria." "Don't thank me yet. You haven't survived wedding planning with me." Victoria's smile turned slightly predatory. "I have very specific ideas about flower arrangements." They spent the afternoon at the house. Marcus had arranged for a catering company to set up lunch on the porch, and they ate together as a family surrounded by the ghosts of Grace's past and the promise of her future. The boys explored every corner of the property. They found the tree Grace used to climb as a child still standing, its branches strong enough to hold new climbers. They discovered the old well now covered with wooden boards and the chicken coop that hadn't housed chickens in 20 years. "We could fix this place up," Miles said. "Make it nice again." "That's the plan," Marcus told him. "A summer house for all of us. All of us, like we'd come here for vacation. Every summer, maybe Christmas too if Grace wants." Grace was sitting on the porch swing, Caleb beside her, watching the others explore. Tears still slid down her cheeks occasionally, but she was smiling that radiant smile that Marcus had come to treasure more than anything. "This is where you grew up," Caleb said quietly. It was one of his longer sentences offered like a gift. "This is where I grew up." "Was it sad without your parents?" Grace considered the question. "Sometimes, but I had my grandmother. She loved me so much it almost made up for everything else." "Like Grace loves us," Caleb said, "even though she's not our real mom." "Caleb." Grace's voice cracked. "I mean, you're real, but you're not, you know." He struggled to find the words. "You're different, but still good. Maybe even better sometimes, because you chose to love us. Mom had to love us because we were her babies. You chose to." Grace pulled him close, burying her face in his hair. "Caleb Sterling, when did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. No one was listening before." "I'm listening now." "I know. That's why I'm talking more." They stayed until sunset, watching the sky turn pink and orange over the Georgia countryside. Then they piled back into the cars and headed home, the boys falling asleep against each other, Grace's hand never leaving Marcus's. "Thank you," she whispered as the city lights came into view. "For what?" "For giving me back my past and my future in the same day. You gave me the same thing. I'm just returning the favor." The wedding was planned for October. Not a huge affair despite Victoria's initial protests. 50 guests maximum in a small chapel in Savannah, followed by a reception at Grace's grandmother's house, which had been beautifully restored over the summer months. Grace wore a simple white dress. No train, no veil, just flowers in her hair and the necklace Marcus had given her at Christmas. The 3 hearts rested against her collarbone, warm with love. The boys wore matching suits that they complained about constantly. "This tie is strangling me," Jaden announced. "You're fine. You've worn ties before." "Not for this long. This is abuse." 3 hours is not abuse. It is if you're slowly dying of tie-related complications. Victoria, resplendent in a deep blue gown, kept the boys in line with a combination of bribery and thinly veiled threats. By the time the ceremony started, all 3 were standing at the altar beside their father, looking surprisingly presentable. Grace walked down the aisle alone. She'd considered asking Victoria to accompany her, but in the end, she wanted to make this journey herself. To walk toward her future on her own 2 feet, bringing with her all the love and loss and hope that had led her here. Marcus watched her approach, tears already streaming down his face, making no effort to hide them. The boys watched too, their usual restlessness stilled by the magnitude of the moment. When Grace reached the altar, Caleb stepped forward and took her hand. He led her the final few steps, placing her hand in his father's, then stepped back with a smile that split his face. "We're giving her to you, Al," he said solemnly. "Take care of her." The guests laughed through their tears. "I will, Marcus promised. Forever." The vows were simple. No elaborate poetry, no borrowed words. Just two people promising to love each other through everything that would come. "I take you as my partner," Marcus said. "In good times and hard times, in sickness and health, in ordinary Tuesday mornings and extraordinary moments, for as long as we both shall live." "I take you as my partner," Grace echoed. "I promise to love your children as my own, to honor the memory of those who came before, to build a future worthy of all we've survived, for as long as we both shall live." They exchanged rings. They kissed. The chapel erupted in applause, and somewhere in a place beyond time, two women who had never met smiled at each other. Sisters finally united through the family they both loved. The reception was everything Grace's grandmother would have wanted. Music and dancing and food that tasted like home. The boys ran wild through the restored gardens, their suits long since abandoned in favor of comfortable clothes. Victoria sat on the porch swing, a glass of champagne in hand, watching her family with an expression of pure contentment. "You did good, Victoria," Grace said, joining her. "I did terrible for most of it. You're the one who did good. You saved us all. I just showed up." That's what saving looks like most of the time, just showing up when it matters. Grace sat beside her mother-in-law, the woman who had once tried to destroy her, now one of her closest allies. "Can I tell you something?" Victoria asked. "Always. I've spent my whole life trying to control things. My husband, my son, my image, everything. I thought that was strength. But watching you, you don't try to control anything. You just love, completely, unconditionally, and somehow everything falls into place around you. Not everything. More than you realize." Victoria took her hand. "I wasted so much time being afraid of losing Marcus, afraid of losing the boys, afraid that someone would see through me and realize I was just a scared old woman pretending to have power." She squeezed Grace's fingers. "You showed me a different way, and I'm grateful." Victoria Sterling being sentimental. "I should record this." "Don't you dare." They laughed together, two women who had come so far from where they started. Marcus found them a few minutes later, the boys in tow. "Family picture," he announced. "Everyone on the porch." They arranged themselves around the swing. Marcus and Grace in the center, the boys piled around them, Victoria standing to the side with a smile that looked almost natural. The photographer counted down. The camera flashed, a family frozen in time, forever documented. "Can we have cake now?" Miles asked. "In a minute. You said that an hour ago, and I'm saying it again. This is a conspiracy against cake." Grace laughed and pulled Miles close. 5 more minutes, then all the cake you want. "Promise?" "Promise." The party continued late into the night. Eventually, the guests departed, Victoria retreated to her hotel, and the boys crashed on the living room couch, too exhausted to make it upstairs. Marcus and Grace sat on the back porch, looking out at the garden that had once been overgrown and was now blooming with new life. "We're married," Grace said, as if testing the words. "We are. That's insane. Completely insane. I was your maid? You were never just my maid." "I was, though. I scrubbed your toilets, I folded your laundry, I organized your pantry by expiration date." Marcus laughed. "And now you're my wife. Life is strange." "The strangest." Grace leaned her head on his shoulder. "Do you think Olivia can see this wherever she is? I think she orchestrated the whole thing. That's a lot of credit. She prayed for someone to come, someone patient, someone kind, someone who would stay." Marcus kissed the top of her head. "She prayed for you, Grace, before you even knew she existed. She prayed you into our lives." "That's beautiful." "It's true." They sat in silence, listening to the crickets, watching the stars appear one by one. "What happens now?" Grace asked. "We live. We raise the boys. We fight about who forgot to buy milk and whose turn it is to do the dishes. We grow old together if we're lucky. We love each other through all of it." "That sounds wonderful." "It does, doesn't it?" Inside, one of the boys murmured in his sleep. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. The old house creaked and settled, adjusting to its new inhabitants. "Hey, Marcus." "Yeah." "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing me. When I first came here, I was invisible. Just another staff member, just another person passing through. But you saw me, eventually, and that changed everything. You changed everything. I just had the good sense to notice. Grace lifted her head and kissed him slow and deep. I love you, Marcus Sterling. I love you too, Grace Sterling. Her new name. She smiled at the sound of it. That's going to take some getting used to. You've got the rest of your life. The rest of my life. With you? With me? With the boys? With my mother, unfortunately? Grace laughed. I actually like your mother now. That's because you broke her. In a good way. I didn't break her. I just showed her another way. Same thing. They stayed on the porch until the stars had fully emerged, until the night had wrapped around them like a blanket, until there was nothing left to say because everything had already been said. Then they went inside, checked on the sleeping boys, and climbed the stairs to their bedroom. Their first night as husband and wife. The first of thousands to come. 2 years later, the family returned to Savannah for a different celebration. The boys were 10 now, taller and louder and more opinionated than ever. Jaden had developed an interest in computers that bordered on obsessive. Miles had discovered soccer and rarely stopped moving. Caleb had become the family philosopher, offering observations that alternated between profound and hilarious. Victoria visited twice a month, sometimes more. She'd mellowed considerably, though she still had strong opinions about flower arrangements and table settings. The boys called her Grandma Vic, now a nickname she pretended to hate but secretly loved. And Grace was pregnant. They'd found out 3 months ago on what would have been Olivia's birthday. Grace had taken the test at 6:14 a.m. alone in the bathroom and stared at the positive result for a full 5 minutes before she could move. When she told Marcus, he cried so hard the boys came running, convinced something terrible had happened. Dad's leaking, Miles announced. He's crying dummy, Jaden corrected. Same thing. It's happy crying, Marcus managed, pulling Grace into his arms. We're having a baby. The boys processed this information with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Finally, Miles pumped his fist. I've been asking for a baby for years. You wanted a puppy, Jaden pointed out. A baby is basically a louder puppy. That's not how biology works. Caleb approached Grace slowly, his eyes on her still flat stomach. Is it a boy or a girl? We don't know yet. We'll find out in a few months. Can we pick the name? We'll discuss it as a family. Caleb nodded solemnly. Then he leaned in and whispered to Grace's belly. Hi, baby. I'm your brother Caleb. I'll teach you how to be quiet and think about things. Miles will teach you how to be loud. Jaden will teach you how to be annoying. It's going to be great. I'm not annoying, Jaden protested. You kind of are, Marcus said. You're supposed to be on my side. I'm on the truth side. Now, at 7 months pregnant, Grace stood in the garden of her grandmother's house, watching her family prepare for the baby shower Victoria had insisted on throwing. The house looked nothing like it had 2 years ago. Fresh paint. New porch. A garden that bloomed with flowers Grace's grandmother had always wanted, but never had time to plant. It was a home again, their home. Marcus appeared beside her, wrapping his arm around her expanded waist. How are you feeling? Enormous, exhausted, happy. The holy trinity of pregnancy. I should put that on a pillow. You should. He kissed her temple. The guests are arriving. Victoria's already directing traffic like she owns the place. She does own 30% of it. Don't remind her. Grace laughed and turned in his arms. Marcus, I need to tell you something. That sounds serious. It is. Well, it might be. She took a breath. I had another dream about Olivia last night. Marcus went very still. Grace still had the dreams, occasionally eventually visits from a sister she'd never known in life. They came less frequently now, but they always left her shaken. What did she say? She said the baby is a girl, and she said I should name her Hope. Hope? Because that's what she represents. All of it. You and me and the boys and this family we've built. It all started with Hope. Marcus's eyes glistened. Hope Sterling. Hope Williams Sterling. If you're okay with that. I'm more than okay with that. I'm honored. Grace pressed her forehead against his. She's going to have so many people who love her. She already does. The baby shower was chaos and joy and too many presents and not enough chairs. The boys ran around helping and hindering in equal measure. Victoria presided over everything with benevolent authority. Friends and family filled the rooms that had once known only loneliness. At one point, Grace found herself alone in her grandmother's old bedroom, now restored to its former glory. She sat on the edge of the bed, one hand on her belly, feeling Hope kick against her palm. Hi, baby, she whispered. I want to tell you about the people who made you possible. She talked about her parents taken too soon, about her grandmother who had loved her enough for both, about Olivia, the sister she'd never met but felt connected to in ways that defied explanation. She talked about Marcus, who had been broken and was now whole, about Victoria, who had been an enemy and was now family, about 3 boys who had needed a mother and found an aunt who loved them just as fiercely. "You're coming into a family that knows about loss," Grace said. "We know what it means to hurt, to grieve, to keep going when everything inside you wants to stop." Hope kicked again hard as if agreeing. "But we also know about healing, about second chances, about love that refuses to give up even when it would be easier to let go." Grace smiled through her tears. "You're going to be so loved, baby girl, so incredibly, impossibly, overwhelmingly loved." The door creaked open. Caleb stood in the doorway watching with those ancient eyes. "Are you talking to the baby?" "I am." "Can I talk to her too?" Grace patted the bed beside her. Caleb climbed up and placed his small hand next to hers on her belly. "Hi, Hope, it's me again, Caleb. I wanted to tell you some important things before you get here." "Like what?" "Like Miles snores, so don't room next to him, and Jaden steals the good snacks, so hide yours. And Dad cries at everything now, which is weird but kinda nice. And Grandma Vic gives really good hugs once you get past the scary part." Grace laughed. "Anything else?" "Yeah, Grace, Mom Grace, she's the best person in the whole world. She came when we needed her, and she never left. That's the most important thing. She never left." Caleb looked up at Grace with shining eyes. "You're going to love her, Hope. Everyone does." Grace pulled her stepson close, her heart so full it ached. "I love you, Caleb." "I love you too, Mom." It was the first time he'd called her, though, without the qualifier. Just Mom? Simple? True. Hope kicked again, hard enough for both of them to feel it. "She's agreeing?" Caleb said. "She definitely is." 2 months later, on a crisp October morning, exactly 2 years after the wedding, Hope Williams Sterling came into the world. She had Grace's and Marcus's stubborn chin. She screamed so loud the nurses laughed and refused to be put down for the first 3 hours of her life. "She's perfect," Marcus whispered, tears streaming down his face as he held his daughter for the first time. "She is." The boys crowded around, fighting for the best view. "She's so small," Miles said. "She's loud," Jaden observed. "She's ours," Caleb added. Victoria arrived an hour later, her usual composure shattered by the sight of her granddaughter. "She looks like Olivia," she whispered. "Around the eyes, the same exact shape." Grace nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. "She's a gift," Victoria continued. "From all of them, from everyone we've lost. They sent her to us." It was the most mystical thing Victoria had ever said. Grace looked at her mother-in-law with new eyes. "I believe that too." That night, after the visitors had left and the hospital had grown quiet, Grace sat alone with her daughter in the dim room. Marcus was asleep in the chair beside them, exhausted but refusing to leave. "Hi, Hope," Grace whispered to the sleeping baby in her arms. "I want to tell you a story." She told her daughter everything, about a billionaire who came home unannounced, about a maid who was praying with 3 small children, about the moment when everything changed. She told her about loss and love and second chances, about a sister who prayed for help and a God who answered, about a family that had been shattered and was slowly put back together, piece by piece, day by day. "You're part of that story now," Grace said. "The best part, the part that proves it was all worth it." Hope stirred in her arms, her tiny fingers curling around Grace's thumb. "I promise you the same thing I promised your brothers. I will show up every day, no matter what. I will love you through the ordinary and the extraordinary. I will stay." She kissed her daughter's forehead, breathing in the newborn smell that was already becoming familiar. "Welcome to the family, Hope. We've been waiting for you." Marcus stirred in his chair, waking just enough to see Grace holding their daughter silhouetted against the hospital room window. "Everything okay?" he murmured. "Everything's perfect." And it was. Not perfect in the way fairy tales mean, with no more problems and no more pain. Their life still had challenges. The boys still fought. Marcus still worked too much sometimes. Victoria still had opinions about everything, but they faced it all together, as a family. Bound not just by blood, but by choice, by commitment, by love that had survived the darkest nights and emerged stronger on the other side. Years later, when people asked Grace how she went from cleaning toilets to becoming Grace Sterling, she always gave the same answer. "I just showed up, and I stayed." That was the secret she'd learned. Not grand gestures or dramatic declarations. Just presence. Just consistency. Just love that refused to quit even when quitting would have been easier. She'd come to that penthouse as a stranger, a maid with nothing to her name but a notebook and a stubborn faith that things could get better. She'd found a family that needed her, and they'd found her right back. The 3 saplings they'd planted that first year had grown into real trees, now tall and strong, their branches reaching toward the sky. Every time Grace saw them, she remembered what she'd told the boys all those years ago. Things don't grow just because we want them to. They grow because we show up. She'd shown up. They'd all shown up. And together, against all odds, they had grown into something beautiful. A family, real and whole and lasting. Forever.